Let me just start by welcoming you all to Advocacy Arena, a place to bring awareness and solution oriented focus to important societal issues. We're so glad you joined us in some good trouble and great conversation. Hopefully, it will help to inform and inspire some civic engagement, coalition building, and grassroots initiatives for change. So let's jump in. We will have a special guest with us today, Lauren Ashley, a concerned parent and education advocate from the great state of Texas. You may be familiar with the viral clip of hers where she was gathering the newly appointed leaders in the Houston School District takeover. So we're looking forward to her joining us. And until then, I'm just going to give a kind of a highlight rundown of some of the news stories that I have been watching and that I feel like we should put on our radar and be aware of. POTUS is visiting Maui today. Last week, he had a summit at Camp David, and we have a lot of climate crises that are affecting many of our states. California, of course, had the hurricane, floods, and an earthquake. And Washington is dealing with some wildfires. AI is continuing to present a problem. There are new lawsuits going on with them, and we want to talk about those more and more because it's going to affect us all. And I know many of you have not forgotten, and I certainly haven't, that the UPS changes that took place when DeJoy was appointed is actually designed to destroy the postal system, and the results are already starting to be known and shown. So I'll be posting information in the Jumbotron and the Nest about these things later today. His program is working as it's planned, and I don't profess to know exactly why he's still there, but I hate that he is. It's hurting us. We want to celebrate Fort Polk being renamed Fort Johnson. I'll be posting a story about the person that it was. Okay, Ashley is here, so we're going to stop and bring her up. Ashley, I am sending you an invite. Look for a bar on the upper top part of your screen to accept, and we'll be bringing you up to speaker. And we're going to dive right in with that. And then Mark will be here later to give us some indictment watch updates. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. Um, Ashley, did you see the invite? Let me see. We may be having this, of course, it's Twitter, and Twitter is being Twitter, so, or X, whatever he wants to call it. Let me just send her a message and see. Ashley, there is on the bottom of your phone some icons, and there is one to the far left that is a mic. If you can click on that, request to speak so I can bring you up um, because I don't know if you were able to see my the request I sent out for you or not. And then over on the far right, there's an icon that's like a heart, and it has a plus sign. Okay, she's here. All right, wonderful. Can you hear us, Ashley? And just hit the mic. Okay. Um, Yes. All right. So, welcome. We can hear you. So, I want you to just take a moment to introduce yourself and share whatever information you would like to share about what's going on there in Texas. The floor is yours, my dear.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm actually in my car driving, so hopefully the connection stays pretty strong. But hi everyone, my name is Lauren. Lauren Ashley, but Lauren is what I go by. I am a parent. I have two children in Houston ISD. My background, I've come from like a community organizing background, but really my involvement with what's going on with HISD in particular is just being a product of the district, having my children in schools that are NES aligned, which is the new system that Mike Miles is implementing at the moment currently for 28 campuses, but has plans to expand, I think, to 150 and more than likely the entire school district. And so I don't know if how familiar everyone is with what's going on, but basically what has happened in Texas is that we have a law that was actually a bill that was authored and became a law by a moderate Democrat who, and there's a lot of political, I guess political like rumors about what his actual intention was with this bill, but what it essentially did is it gave the state of Texas power to take over any district that had one school that was failing based on these state metrics, which they kind of move around and bend. And they what they typically do is they'll use these state metrics and standards to kind of base and judge school districts on. Unfortunately, because of the political climate, they can adjust those and amend those as they see fit. And so because HISD is a very large district for a very large cities for a very large city at any given time, there's going to be one school based on that standard, based on that system that may be failing. And so this is something we have fought off before in the past. This time around, TEA was successful in its takeover. And so what that essentially did is it removed our elected school board, who is charged with a number of things around like budget, but one of their most important jobs is hiring a superintendent. And so that elected school board was removed. It was replaced with a board of managers, and who then, approved the hiring of Mike Miles, who's our superintendent now. The biggest issue with Mike Miles is that, for one, he comes from Dallas Independent School District, which is another major city in Texas. Was there about 3 years, so he did not finish out his full contract time. He just did not do a good job, and the district wasn't any better off than when he got there. And he also is the CEO of a network of charter schools, which, for me, in my personal opinion, this seems like a huge conflict of interest. And so he's here now in Houston, pretty much, really not accountable to the public because, he's not hired by an elected school board. From what we've seen so far, based on these previous school board meetings, the board of managers really is not there to be an accountability piece, more so kind of a rubber stamp his agenda. And so right now we're in a situation where we are kind of just, it feels like we're at the whim of whatever this guy wants to do. And so in those 28 schools that I mentioned earlier that are under this new education system where all of the current staff had to reapply for their jobs, those campuses will have their libraries shuttered. So at this point, their librarians have been fired or repurposed, and those libraries are being repurposed for what they call testing centers, but essentially what they are going to be disciplinary detention centers for kids who are disruptive in class. The biggest issue with that is obviously, on its face, it's just literally the school to prison pipeline. But we're talking about 28 schools that were critically under resourced before the takeover, and are going to be even worse off without a library on campus. And so, with those 28 schools that are NES designated, there are schools within those feeder patterns that had the choice to opt in. So my children are at two campuses that chose to opt in to the NES system because they're able to pay teachers more. There's some trade-offs that come with that. But the problem is they are also going to be held to that same standard. And so, whereas those 28 schools didn't have a choice to fire their librarians, those NESC line schools don't necessarily have to, but they will comply to get those benefits from the district. And so that was, a very, very long-winded, kind of drawn out explanation, but that's kind of essentially what's going on. The work we're doing on the ground now is to try to organize and really just raise awareness about what's going on, organizing parents and community members to push back, really to shed light. They say democracy dies in the dark. And so, if nothing else, we really just want to be very clear with Mike Miles that while he was not, hired by an elected school board, that doesn't mean the community is not going to find a way to hold him accountable. And as we've seen with the teacher convocation and how that was a huge mess, and some of the national press around just some what I would call malfeasance, his response hasn't been very receptive to the criticism, and I think he's getting an understanding of this is not going to be as easy as he thought it was. But at the very same time, it's us kind of having to continue to beat the drum to get people to pay attention, because there is a lot of pushback on the other side that says, well, HISD has had its problems. And to that, as a person who's a parent and a product, I will say, yes, I 100% agree. But what we have lost is a right, and it's indicative of kind of the political climate in our state, but also what's happening nationally, as we're seeing trends with just the dismantling of public education as a whole. And so I'll just pause there. Like I said, again, I can be a little wordy, but just wanted to kind of give paint the picture as clearly as possible.
Well, I think you did a fabulous job, and I am so thankful again for you agreeing, to come and take a little time out of your day, and just applaud you and the work that you're doing. I know the people here in this community have been fangirling you for quite some time. They loved the passion that they saw in your video, and I wanted an opportunity for you to share your passion with us here, and also just to further highlight, because we talk a lot, and I know just for, you and I had a brief conversation, but for those of you, this is Lauren Ashley's first time in a space. So I am glad that it was ours. And I just wanted her to know that she had a lot of people who were of like minds, who were doing the work in various different places. And if you guys, anyone in the audience, would like an opportunity to ask Lauren any questions, please, request the mic, come up and do so. And we're just going to kind of continue our conversation around education. I think many of you may have already seen a post that I made on Saturday night, and I did another one yesterday about, the history, because, of course, part of this death by a thousand cuts of the education system is them taking away bits and pieces of the curriculum. And one of them, of course, is history, and that was one of the things on the list. I see that Arkansas has joined Florida in attacking the ability for AP classes to be taught. And we need to, as I said, fight back. I'm so glad that Lauren is on the ground there in Houston, fighting back. I see Shauna is in here. She's another Texan, and I know she's probably working, so I'm not sure if she's has an opportunity to come up and speak or not. But I would love to hear from her. And we did have. LMZ come up, and I'm going to give her the floor and see if she has any questions or comments.
Can I just want to jump
Yes,
in
yes,
right
Gwen.
before you
Please,
get to
I'm
the
sorry.
speakers?
Yes.
Hi. No, that's okay. Hi. I'm known on here as Soul Sister. My name is Gwen. I just wanted to let you know that I that video was very inspiring, because normally we don't see many of the mothers that look like you, D, and I standing at the mic taking the school board to task over really, truly relevant arguments, and being sincere when we say we're trying to look out for the best interests of our children's education. And I know you posted, oh, it was probably a week or two ago, about people asking you to run for something. And I just want to co sign on that, ma'am, and say uh, we would love to. I know real life has many responsibilities and obligations for you as a parent, and probably a working mother, or even if you're not working, just the pylon of everyday life can be a lot. but you have a strong community here, and like Dee has already pointed out, there are people in this space who are in Texas, and even those of us who aren't in Texas who want to support you and will be supporting you for whatever your endeavors are. I just want to thank you for being courageous enough, and I want to encourage you to keep it up. And I learned something that I had not known, which was about the librarians being fired. That was the craziest thing that I had never heard that until I read some articles that you were sharing. So anyway, just wanted to say hi and thank you so much for coming today. We've been really looking forward to hearing from you, and thanks for taking the time to share your story.
Thank you so
Uh,
much.
uh,
Thank you. I'm so humbled. Indeed, thank you again for inviting me. When you reached out to me initially, I was like, "Oh, y'all want to talk to me?" And so I appreciate you holding this space and doing the work that you're doing to keep keep people, I'm gonna say just our community nationally informed. I know this labor on your part, but also again very humbled and grateful to be here. And I haven't made any concrete plans yet, but I will tell y'all to stay tuned. Stay tuned, because if there is something like that, I'm definitely gonna need y'all support. So, like I said, stay tuned.
all right. And so, sister, please forgive me. I was just so anxious trying to make sure that she got in here comfortably and got out to a start. I totally
Not a
forgot.
problem. Not a problem. I knew it, D, but I knew that once we got going, I might not get an opportunity to say what I wanted to say before she had to go. And I wanted to make sure I took that moment. So thank you so much. And sorry to interrupt the schedule. I know you said LMZ was next. So I'm going to sit back and listen and enjoy this.
All right. Well, LMZ, and then we have Q, and then I'm bringing up the Sean. So, LMZ, you have the floor, my dear.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Miss D and Soul Sister, for the time. First of all, I want to welcome you, Lauren Ashley, to your first space. This is Advocacy Arena, like Miss D said, is held every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and she and Soul Sister are the wonderful hosts where we try to make good trouble and fight for democracy and fight to keep fascism in all of its different ways out of our country. And so the reason I wanted to come up just very quickly, being respectful of your time, Lauren Ashley, is that without centering myself in any way, I just want to share that my professional work is in advocacy every day. And my state is North Carolina, where we currently don't have a budget that should have been in place on July 1st. And every day that we don't have a budget is costing us an additional $42,000 a day. And one of the reasons why we don't have a budget is that the Republicans are doing all that they can to defund the North Carolina public school system. There literally is a an effort to defund the North Carolina public school systems and go to charter
Yep.
schools. Well, and you know what that's about, I'm sure, Lauren Ashley, and what that is, and the racism behind that, the classism behind that. And so it's a huge issue right now where public school is going to start a week from today, and we don't have enough teachers, we don't have school social workers, we don't have the funding for our bus drivers. I'm preaching to the choir and you. So I'm very aware, like I said, just not just because, like I said, in my work, 40 plus hours a week, I'm working on things that are directly related to what's happening. Similar to what you're facing there in Houston, Texas, where there is literally white supremacy every day, and it has now seeped back into our education, our public schools. When you think about how far so many people have come in this country doing all they could, all the way back to Thurgood Marshall in the Supreme Court when he was, practicing as an attorney in the NAACP and the Supreme Court. And then he got on the Supreme Court. And then Brown versus Board of Education. And it's not that long ago. And now here we are, Lauren, in 2023. And people are having to fight every day so that children in our school can have the education that they're supposed to have. And even the libraries, like you said, the school to prison pipeline that they have in the audacity and caucasity to turn our libraries, which is, freedom of education and where children can learn and imagine and be creative and learn about themselves and learn about other countries and places and our history, all of that. And so I say all of this to say that I want to honor and uplift you for the honest to God, and I'm a woman of faith, so I don't use his name in vain, the honest to God hero that you are, for the work that you are doing. Because this is not the fight of some small little disagreement in one little school board someplace. This is literally the fight against white supremacy in our country that is here to steal, kill, and destroy. And this is the fight against fascism that is already here, where they are, deciding that they're going to not teach the truth about African American history. They're not going to teach the truth about all kinds of different histories, but African American history is one of the main ones, and they're going to distort and lie about the truth of the horror of slavery in this country. And they're going to lie about all kinds of things. That is fascism. They're going to ban books. That is fascism. And for you to take your voice and stand up and do what you did, that is a hero. And there are so many Americans that watch this on the news or read about it real quick when they're scrolling by on social media, and they say, well, why are they allowed to get away with that? Why is that happening? Oh, that's such a mess. Blah, 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 blah. What can we do? Oh, I don't know. Why is that happening? And I don't get why they're allowed to get, because you're not saying or doing anything about it. That's why it's allowed to happen. And you, Lauren Ashley of Houston, Texas, are on the grounds as a soldier fighting against it, saying, I'm not going to allow it to happen to my children and other people's children. I'm going to use the voice that I have to at least speak out and fight against it. And while we don't know which battles we'll win or which battles we'll lose, it's the point of doing something about it. When I saw the clip when you started trending, I cried. Again, I'm not centering myself. I just need you to know I was that moved here, a stranger in North Carolina, to see you do what you did, that I cried. Because I watch the what is happening across our country and see so few people have the courage and the voice that you have. I was moved to tears. Now, not everybody can verbally do necessarily what you did, but I come from a belief system that while everybody can't do everything, somebody can always do something for someone. And so I just want to honor you for the good work and the good trouble that you're getting in, and know that we support you here in Advocacy Arena. Please keep us updated on the things that you're doing. If there's any way we can amplify what you're doing here on social media so that it can get some national attention and trending, we'll be happy to do that. But just know that, this LMZ in North Carolina sees you, is humbled by you, is inspired by you. And when my work can drain me and get me down, I see an advocate like you, I see an activist like you, and I am truly inspired. With that, I will land my plane. Thank you.
Thank you so
Wow.
much, LMZ.
Wow.
I told
Y'all are
you
about to make
these
me
people have been.
I'm I'm in tears right now. Seriously, I'm
I
doing my
told you
best to
you had
like
a
focus on.
ready, waiting
Wow.
audience. Okay, so with that, we're going to go to Q next. And if you guys can kind of keep it brief, because I'm not sure, Lauren Ashley said she only had a brief amount of time. And so if anyone has any questions of her, I want to, have an opportunity for that. But Q is next, and the Sean is next, but I think she was having some connection problems. So if she comes back in, we'll get her up. And then Dawn, Khalil, and Shauna. And again, thank you guys so very much for being here and just being, treating Lauren Ashley with the love that I knew you would. So,
I,
Q, you're up next.
I just want to say something again. Look at me jumping in again. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there must be something about the name Lauren that is touched by a spirit, because both of the Laurens that I have the honor of knowing, LMZ, my bestie, and now Lauren Ashley. I, there's something about it that you guys inspire and continue to hold evil and destruction to the fire. So I just wanted to say that. Anyway, bye.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. I know it's like I'm trying to hold myself back because she is. She's very inspiring, and as I told you guys, passion is contagious, and so we've caught her fire, and we're so glad she's here. So, Q, you're next, and then Dawn, and Khalil and Shauna, and if the Sean comes back, we'll get her in the queue. So, Q, thanks for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing really good, Miss D and Soul Sister. I am really glad that you all are having this space today because it exposes the rest of us to what is going on in our country. Because I'm not going to lie, like I didn't know that education was under attack like that in Texas. Like, I mean, I had read some stories or anything, things like that, but I didn't know that Black people and what we stand for are under that serious of attack. So, for Lauren, the only question I have for you is how can I help? I don't live in Texas. I live in Ohio, but I am very motivated to help causes around the country that I believe in, and I believe in your cause because you have made a very passionate um, statement on why you're doing what you're doing. So. Tell me how I can help remotely from here in Ohio, because we cannot let this go on. Because the thing about it is, what happens in Texas is transported all over the country, because Texas has a historical context of writing textbooks, designing curriculum, and they transport them around our country. So if they're doing that in Texas right now, we need to stop that so that it doesn't infect the rest of us. Even though the rest of us are under attack, but it just doesn't sound as severe as what you're going through. So tell me how I can help.
Th-
Oh,
Go ahead, Lauren. Lauren
oh,
Ashley.
thanks so much for that, Q. And so, what I'm gonna ask you guys to do, and this is not to like self promote myself, but it's just to make sure that like y'all are following me, so I can like direct y'all to what's going on and how y'all can help kind of
Yes,
remotely.
yes, I have
But
already
please
followed you.
do follow Houston CVPE. And Houston CVPE is the Community Voices for Public Education on the ground organizing. They're an organization that I'm pretty very familiar with from my time when I used to work for the teachers union years ago. But they're doing a lot of the door knocking, the block walking, the really boots on the ground work to inform parents in our community about what's going on on. They currently have a petition that's going on. And while the takeover has already happened, we still are collecting signatures, if nothing else, to be able to show that people in the community are not okay with this. Because Mike Miles' thing is, and anytime people are trying to, silence your voice, they love to say, well, there's no dissent. Like, or the dissent is very small. There's a few, rabble rousers or troublemakers, but generally, for the most part, people are happy about what's happening. And so we really want to just,
Kind of
get
like
loud.
slavery had
Kind of
benefits, kind of thing.
exactly like that. What do they say? If you don't complain, they'll kill you, and say that you enjoyed it. And so that's kind of where we are. And so we want to ring the alarm. Another thing that we asking people to do is share our post on social media. If you see posts from the Houston Chronicle or even like national news outlets that are talking about the TA thing, please, go a little bit further. Houston is because it's such a large urban city.
Hey, Lauren Ashley, you're getting a little garbly. I know you said you were in the car, so it might
Oh, I'm
be like
sorry.
kind of a dead spot. Oh, now you're
Okay.
you're clear. Okay, so
Okay.
continue. Yeah, I just want
Sorry
them to
about that.
hear every word. No problem. Go ahead, continue. Okay, I don't know if she just wanted to take a pause there. I'm going to continue with Han. She may be in kind of a little dead spot. Let's pick up with Dawn, then Khalil, Shauna, and we'll get her to chime back in.
Her mic is on. Is she able to speak now? I can wait. Miss Lauren?
Hey, can y'all hear me? Okay,
Yes,
sorry about that.
I can wait.
And I'll be really short. I was just gonna say that I'll be sharing information about what's happening in some of our smaller rural areas in Texas and in suburban areas, because what's happening out there is those parents, those conservative parents, those astroturf movements are really mobilized out there, and they're doing the book banning. So while we're having our libraries ripped from us, there's the other side of this, parental rights advocacy, astroturf movement around banning books. And so, just really wanting people to understand, like you said, Q, if it's happening in Texas, it's going to happen everywhere. And I think what is unique about Houston ISD, when I say that we're the canary in the coal mine, it's not to say that state takeovers of public districts haven't happened, but we haven't really seen this on this large of scale and for these political implications. We know that it's about charter, bringing more charters in and privatizing education. But what I don't want to be lost is we're also being punished. This is another example of our state punishing us. We also have about 18 judges, Democratic judges, who were elected, who are being sued in Harris County by the people who they beat in an election. And those are some of the very same people who are supporting and funding this HISD takeover. So while these things may not seem related, all of it's kind of connected, and it's really just a larger push to silence and punish cities like Houston that exist in these very, large Republican states.
And absolutely. And we talk about that a lot. And I want to give the speakers a chance, but I wanted to kind of draw some more, current connections, because I think I told you on the phone yesterday that it concerns me, because people in our community knows that I've been talking about the education problem here in Tennessee for a long time. And it was very disturbing to me to learn we just got a new education commissioner, and she came from Texas. Okay, she has connections to Florida. The previous one we had came from there too. So you think
Mm,
they're not bringing that same program here? They're doing it. They're moving the people around to the different areas where they want to do it. But again, like I said, I want to get to the speakers, but there is a very, very direct and visible connection. So we'll get more to that, and I'll be posting about her. But yes, she is this new one is Latina, but she's from Texas, and her I'll give you the name. I'll have to find her name, but her husband is still hasn't moved here yet. He's still in Texas, and he actually is an advisor to the Texas government. So knowing that it is largely a GOP government in control there, that tells you everything. So
wow.
go, yeah. So go ahead, Don, and then Khalil. And Shauna, I'm so glad that you had an opportunity in your day to come up to join us, and we'll continue.
Thank you so much, Dee and Soul Sister for hosting the space. And thank you, Lauren, for coming in today. I don't know if I'm one of the fangirls that Dee talked about earlier. We were on the phone on a Friday, and I was like, you got to see this girl. So we were just going, and you were rotating, and we were looking at what's going on, but we were in the conversation with also LMZ that is also in here about how they're destroying education. I am also a blue dot in between two red states, and it's been going on for years. The assault on education, but I don't want to spend too long just talking about how. If as long as we destroy education, the punishment that you spoke to, it destroys the nation, and they're coming after our children, especially when they see that there is a huge growing population of minority in the United States. So this is the only way that they can do it. And Dee has been an excellent advocate for education and looking at what's going on in these red states, the assault. So they cannot compete with the rest of the nation. So we just want to amplify you. We thank you for coming in here today. We are a close collective community, and we would love to see you again. I want to hurry up and rush real quick because I definitely want Shauna to get in here, who's in Texas, who leads quite an online charge for phone banking and text banking, and she's in the greater Dallas area. But I do have a question for you. Do you see a future in politics? Because your brand is definitely needed for this time period right now. And I don't want to mean to put you on the spot, but that is why it hit so well that Friday night. Endless rotations, my love. Do you see a future in politics?
Oh, so you know what? Maybe a couple of weeks ago, I would have said absolutely not. And for a really, really long time, that's really just kind of been my MO. I'm like, y'all, I'm behind the scenes. I want government to function. I want to be able to trust and have faith that the people that I vote for will do the job and advocate. But things change, and it's always going to be into reason. And I feel like if you keep hearing something over and over, sometimes that's divine, right? It's not just my ego speaking. And so I'll say this: stay tuned.
And that's
You know,
precisely the reason, Miss Lauren, because you haven't been tainted by it yet. It's pure passion and work on the ground.
yeah, it's like I
Absolutely.
said,
Thank you, Dawn. Yes.
yeah. I want to be able to do what is needed. And so whatever that takes shape in the form of, I just want to be where I need to be to make sure that people are getting what they need, and are feeling advocated for and supported. And so if that looks like me holding office, if that's where I'm most effective, then sure. And so what I would say is, regardless of what the decision is, I'm gonna need support, whether it's taking on the school board, the school board and the superintendent, or if I run for office. And so, like I said again, stay tuned, stay tuned. Right now, what's in front of me is really just trying to district be an advocate for educators and really just ring the alarm about what's happening here in Texas, because I don't want people going through what we're going through right now. And I think that's the other side, the personal part of it. I was like, I'm not excited for my kids to go back to school right now. I'm dreading what this year is going to entail and what this is going to look like. And I hate that teachers are having to deal with this right now instead of being able to decorate their classrooms and be excited about what's happening. And so again, like I said, kind of looking directly in front, I want to make sure that, I'm helping bring attention to this movement, helping build some sustainability, because this is a long fight. This is a long fight we're in for. And I want, folks to know that this is a marathon. This is not going to be a quick fix. But like I said again, I'll say it again. Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned.
All
And
right.
Dee, may I ask one more quick question? But as of
Sure.
Shauna and Miss Lauren, I'm done. Um, Shauna had mentioned in the space probably sometime last year when we were during the midterms, talking about the midterms, that one of her polling places when she was in her greatest Dallas area was an actual library. Is that true of the state of Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Most voting venues are in libraries.
So we have a lot of different venues that are used for polling places, one place that I usually vote is at my children's school. And when I used to work for the teachers union, so there was a time where we were our voting like laws are still very strict. It's still very hard to vote in Texas. But in Harris County, we're able to vote anywhere in the county instead of like a specific place. And so when I was going to schools, a lot of time I would just pop into a school, do my visit, and then vote on the way out. And so even thinking about that, for example, is something that's just up in the air. Because like I said, if you want to, political control, there's a lot of things you can do to make voting inaccessible to people, and this is one way. A lot of parents would utilize, either the public library nearest to the school, or they would pop in, drop their kids off, and vote like I would do for work. So that's a whole nother thing. And with that, if y'all are, really want to get into the weeds about what's going on in Harris County, just Google, Harris County elections administrator. Like recently, and I don't want to, get too into the weeds in it because I don't want to say anything wrong here. But right now we're in a fight with our state because we're being like targeted, and it's literally just our county, because we've had so many people. Like voting has kind of exploded here. We're turning out larger and larger numbers of people coming out to vote. And so we're kind of getting spanked on the hand a little bit. And it's happened pretty much every legislative session since 2020, where we're having these different we're having voter accessibility kind of it's shrinking here. And so right now our county is having to sue our state because they're trying to remove the local official that oversees voting for our county and our county alone. So no other county in the state of Texas would have to comply with this law except for us. And it's literally because in 2020 we had one of the largest elections we had, to the credit of my good friend Chris Hollins, who was our county clerk at the time. We had 24-hour voting, we had extended voting hours, we had polling locations in places you had never seen, and we responded accordingly. We came out and voted in record numbers. And so literally since then we have been being popped on the hand. So saying all that to say too, that's another side of that to pay attention. If you remove people's right to make decisions, if you make it very hard for them to vote and say, hey, this is what my voice is saying, it becomes really easier to roll back a whole host and a whole number of rights.
Absolutely. And what you're saying describes actually what the beginning stages of what they're doing here. And I can tell you, look for it, guys. I don't want to be right, but I can see this happening to the Shelby County school systems here in Tennessee. Why? Because it is largely African American. And why? Because they've already started to do some of the things that Lauren Ashley talked about them doing, putting laws in place, basing their funding on meeting certain goals. And Ashley just dropped out. Hopefully, she'll be able to come back. She probably got to a place where she lost connection. But like I said, the things that they're doing are very similar across state lines. And why are they similar? You guys already know. It's because these bills and these methods have been churned out by ALEC. They are the bill mill, and they may take shape differently in different locales and regions because of what's allowable there and the specific laws of that region. But make no mistakes, this is their plan, and they are continuing it, and they will continue it. Okay, Ashley is back. So, all right, we're going to pick up. I'm going to interrupt the order just a little bit because Miss Deshawn was up. I'm going to go to Deshawn, then Khalil and Shauna. Shauna, do you have time, my dear? Because I know that you worked it. Do you have a little?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So let me get Deshawn, Khalil, and then you. Okay. Thank you guys for your patience, and thank you for just being here today, participating and supporting. So go ahead, Deshawn. I'm glad you were able to get reconnected.
Thank you, Dee, for providing some assistance because I kept getting kicked out, and I am super excited to be a part of this particular space and to hear from Lauren. And I just, first of all, I want to thank you for speaking up. I was initially concerned because I've been watching what's been happening down in Houston. That led me down a rabbit hole. I said, "Oh Lord," and that's all I kept saying was just, "Oh Lord, oh Lord." And then I saw you, and I knew that there was some hope. There's some hope because you told him the truth. What's going to happen once you're gone? After the destruction's over with, what's going to happen once you're gone? And my concern is, um, and Q mentioned this, is that if it happens one area, it'll happen someplace else. Um, my concern is that this is going to spread throughout the state of Texas, particularly with those districts that have a large number of Black and Brown children. And I do have family and friends that reside in Texas.
And the
And
rural areas too, because Lauren sent me
yes,
some great articles on that. But go ahead. It looks like I
and
lost my co-host, but she'll be back.
but so it's I spoke in a previous space about how this whole concept of school takeover began, and it's just going to continue to balloon until we actually start speaking up. And they're counting on us not speaking up because, for let's just be very honest, most people don't think that it concerns them until it does concern them. Um, and so, wow, there's so much.
All right. Well, don't go anywhere, Sean. Let me get to a couple of more speakers. If you want to just kind of wind up there, but you can certainly speak again. I just, like I said, I'm not sure how long Lauren Ashley's going to have, and I want to, get the other speakers, especially in case they have a question for her. That's okay. Oh, we lost her again. So, Khalil, and then Sean.
Hey Dee, I'm fine with letting Sean go
Okay, Shauna.
first. Mhm.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Shauna, go ahead, sweetie. Shauna, I can
Oh
see
yes,
that.
I'm here.
uh,
Sorry,
Okay, that's all
I
right.
had
But I know
well, my
that,
app had closed down for a second.
yeah, Twitter is being Twitter. So,
It is no, no. I just want to say first off, thank you so much. I saw your clip too, and I was so inspired because here in Texas, people think that no one's doing anything, and it's so nice to see someone here from the state to know that that people here are still fighting because I see things every day where people think that this state should secede from the other states and that we're a lost cause. And I have to kindly remind people that in 2020, this state had more votes for Biden Harris besides California. So there are people still here fighting and doing what needs to be done. So just seeing what you were doing was just a visual reminder that that we aren't here, going down without a fight. So I appreciate everything that you're doing and what you have done, and what you'll continue to do. I think what you were saying about it being a punishment. I remember. I think after 2020, I know that Abbott was really upset about that close election with the judges and that they were going to start trying to interfere with Houston. And so, yes, this definitely is a punishment. And I know that what they're trying here is they're going to try it with DISD, and they're going to try it with San Antonio and Bayard County. And so I just, I'm definitely inspired by you. And what do you think should be done, like in San Antonio or Dallas, or like what would you like recommend kind of like to keep this from
Yeah. So I think as much as possible, people being informed and being aware about what's going on. I think overall, people kind of, especially around like school board and school politics, people tend to think, well, if I don't have a child in a district, it's not really my concern. And I tell people all the
right.
time, the way that our schools are funded, if you pay property taxes or you live somewhere where somebody's paying a property tax, you should be concerned. Those are your tax dollars at work.
Mm-hmm.
And so us getting involved in like school board races, for example, the same way that conservatives have been able to build this astroturf movement. And again, I say this has been happening for decades. Like I remember being young, like in school myself, and I vaguely remember like George W. Bush coming out and like endorsing like in a school board race or like making a donation, and it made like the news. And so when you think about kind of Alex, and like somebody had posted a tweet earlier, and even like the Koch brothers, for example, kind of using like that dark, those, them as
That
examples of
dark
dark
money.
money.
Mm-hmm.
They have hedged their bets and realized our policies are not popular, so we are going to have to infiltrate at the lowest levels of government. Think about like school board races, and even like in Texas, the railroad commissioner. Every conservative statewide candidate and Republican office holder, for the most part, has started off as the railroad commissioner, virtually a position that nobody really even knows what they do. It has very little to do with the railroads, but from Ted Cruz, I think, all the way to Greg Abbott, they've all been the railroad commissioner, right? So that's like a really important office we should be paying more attention to. But it's just one of those things, the system that we're in, we are just pressed. We work 40 hours a week. We don't have a lot of time to be engaged. And so we kind of have to like really kind of see this as kind of like a crisis. And we're playing defense. Like this is not the Republican Party of the 90s where, your friends or your dad or, might have a good friend that voted for Bob Dole. Right now we're in the middle of like a cultural war, and it feels one-sided because we don't feel like, we're angry about anything, but clearly there's folks on the other side that seek to roll back rights and benefit from us having a limited voice and for us to be marginalized. And so I think we have to really kind of connect all of those dots in a really in a real way and say, okay, why are these people so invested in banning books in these rural areas? And are these the same people that are really invested in taking over HISD? And then thinking about, well, what does that mean? Who benefits from a school district being taken over, on the front, like who on the front end, who makes money from that? Then on the back end, as much as we try to steer away from conspiracy theories, I do challenge people to think about who benefits from an undereducated populace. Like what industry can you think about on the top of your mind benefits from people not being literate, for example, right? Politically, for example, who benefits
Fascist.
from a undereducated populace, right? You know what I mean? And so when you think about even like Nazi Germany, who did they start attacking before they were actually outright, erasing and murdering people? They went after arts and literature. They went after the poets. They went after the musicians. They went after fine arts. They went after the sciences, when they were doing research on, medical research on gender non-conforming people way back then in the 30s and 40s. That's who they went after. And so when you look at our political climate now, we're seeing in the same way where education is being attacked, where people who, don't exist within certain binaries are being attacked, where our public's resources are being critically underfunded, and I tell people all the time, your budgets show priority. Budgets are moral documents. And so if you can show me where you are purposely deprioritizing education, I can show you exactly the plan that you have for the people, that you're overseeing. And that's for them to not be very empowered. And so I know, again, that's a very long-winded kind of like a roundabout answer, but it's really us getting involved and staying involved and drawing the dots between why this local issue that's bothering me and that's a nuisance is actually part of a larger systemic issue. And I also want to point out too that Austin ISD, if they have not been taken over by the state yet, they are on their way. And Austin is another example of a city. It's the capital of Texas, kind of a blue dot in this big red in this big red state. It's a college town, and it is a place where we are also seeing the shift in demographics because it's become so expensive to live there, where a lot of our folks just don't have political power there. We're seeing them being pushed out of the city, and we have to, like I say again, draw those connections in who benefits from us not having a voice. And that's just kind of like where it is. And like I said again, I'm kind of nerdy, and so I am probably making this way too wonky, but it really
No, you're
is part
hitting
of a
all
very
the right
large
points.
trend. No, thank you. And like I said, and I wish I would have told D before. I'm like, y'all, I talk way too much. I'm a little bit of a weirdo, but it's just because I've spent so much time like doing the work, but I'm also very close to the problem. Like I'm not coming in from, from some book I read about organizing in school district takeovers. I'm literally living it. My daughter receives sped accommodations. My baby is dyslexic, and Mike Miles, our superintendent, just got rid of about 20 contractors who provide those sped services. So now I'm worried because it took us a really long time to get her those accommodations before the district was taken over. Now we have a superintendent who is actively cutting the resources that were already limited. So as a mother, I'm like, yeah, I have to stand in front of this guy from harming not just my child, but all of the other children who need these services. Like my baby and my babies, both my son and my daughter, are blessed. We have the resources to fly them to the moon if we needed, to make sure that they, were getting adequate services. But for one, I shouldn't have to. The school in my neighborhood should be good enough. But two, I also think about those other children who don't have those same resources. What happens to them? What happens to a dyslexic Black child in a class who's not able to understand what is on paper in front of them? What is their trajectory in life?
Or have an advocate.
Or have an advocate. And I say, we talk about the school to prison pipeline. They have a plan for our children. It's not the plan that we want to see for our children, but I guarantee you they have a plan for our kids.
They absolutely do. And no, I love
Yes.
everything that you're saying because, like I said, you're hitting all the right points and it's important. And people, I feel like I have been preaching, to the choir, and it's just nice to have some new voices in who are, kind of on the same page, so to speak. And I love that you understand and you speak to how the dark money is infiltrating this process and actually is behind it and is pressing it. So I'm going to continue with the hands.
Thank you.
Khalil, thank you, Shauna, and thanks, Khalil, for giving Shauna an opportunity to go before you. And now, sir, you have the mic. And then BJ is next. And I know she's probably very, very encouraged by all that she's hearing because BJ is an educator. So Khalil and then BJ.
Thank you, Dee, and thank you, so sister, for bringing us all together and to have this really important conversation. To more than anything, tell you how honored we are. I gotta ask a question. Everyone is saying, everyone is called you at Lauren Ashley. Like, is that the way, like, when our mom and dad used to call us by our whole name? Are we calling you by your whole name? Are we doing?
So So my mom actually wanted me to be called, like, my name is Lauren Ashley, like my as like a first name.
Oh,
And just as was just like, oh, that's just, weird. And so when I got to school, I was just like, I'm just Lauren, and Ashley is my middle name. And so I'm gonna tell you like a silly story. So for some reason, when people they see me and they literally just assume my name is Ashley without knowing that that's my middle name. They'll just say, you look like an Ashley. And I'm an 80s baby, so every other girl around me was named Ashley. And so my mom passed in 2015. And people that knew me, like that worked with her, previously, people that are like in the sorority with me that knew her, always referred to me as Lauren Ashley. And so just kind of as a nod to her and a tribute to her, I just was like, you know what, I'm getting a little bit of attention. I got about 15 minutes of fame. I'll be Lauren Ashley for the world so my mom can smile down. And so that's kind of just where that comes from.
oh, that is that's a wonderful acknowledgement of your mom and honor to your mom, and I'm going to, yield to that and call you Lauren Ashley. Um, what a wonderful story. There's so much that I want to say to you. But I'm going to be relatively brief. I just want you to know how much we respect you making, challenging the system as you are doing it. Um, the way the voice that you have is just so incredible. And I thought just that watching that video that your voice was was powerful. But just listening to you today, I'm like, wow. And I could see why people are trying to encourage you to go forward, to perhaps become, go into politics, because again, you have just such a wonderful appreciation, such a deep understanding of what the issues and challenges are in doing this third reconstruction. And I'm not sure, I, you know, those of us who've been doing this for a little bit, we recognize this as the third reconstruction. That's the first one was after reconstruction. The second one was, you know, after Brown versus Board of Education, up until Dr. King was killed. And then the third one has often been identified as the one after Obama's election. We have this whole period between 68 and Obama's election that, we we're still trying to find our way and trying to get ourselves back on track to move ourselves forward. And unfortunately, we became really fragmented, and that's a whole nother discussion. But what I am want to say to you is, you are really part of, I mean, an incredible part of a legacy. I'm just so happy to hear your voice as it appears. And I'm an old head. I'm a segregation baby, so I'm always looking for these voices. I spend a lot of my time trying to nurture these voices in my community and even on this app, because I do believe we're part of a third reconstruction, and you really are such a symbol of that. That's why we gravitated towards you. It's not just what you were saying, but it's the way you were saying it. And the people that we're dealing with, there's a boldness about them that we haven't seen since the '60s. Unfortunately, because of the former guy, we've gotten these forces have decided that they know they can't win on the issues, so they decided to cheat, lie, steal, all the things that a great case of projection, because everything they accuse us of, they do. And I just want you to know that, again, coming from an old head, that how much, and I don't, based on how, just listening to you speak, I'm sure you recognize it, but you really are part of a legacy. And we didn't have these voices back when I was young. We had these voices, excuse me, we didn't have the ability to amplify them as we do now. And one of the reasons I so appreciate Dee and Soul Sister is because that's what they're doing. They're using the tools that's available to us to amplify voices such as yours. And while, many of us do not live in Texas that you're listening to and talking to and listening to you today, what we are, though, is part of a community that people like Dee and Soul Sister are caretaking, and this medium allows us for all of this. You still hear me?
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yes, now we can.
It allows us to talk to people from all over the country, which is just for an old head like me, is something that I never like to discount. That I'm talking to people from everywhere, all over the world, and being able, letting them hear you, letting them see beyond your video, who you are, letting them hear your voice, and it's just really important to us right now. You pointed out that, and others have pointed out as well. This is not an isolated incident. What they've been doing in Texas, they've been quite bold about. Thanks to Shauna, we've been on top of it. She tells us and shares with us and others in Texas, what a lot of the challenges are, and as a result, we're pretty familiar with it. Not as intimately as you, of course, but pretty familiar with it. And everybody from Paxton to the governor. There's look, there are about 7 or 8 states: Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi, um, Arkansas, and I'm forgetting one other one. But they're really like the foundation for white conservatism. I mean, these states, they plant their flags there. And so as a result, you're a part of that. And so your fight is even more intense than it is in other places. So I don't want you to discount your voice. I mean, I'm not saying I think you should run. I think that's a decision, a very, very decision you have to make, very personal one. Uh, but as you pointed out, there are other ways to be engaged and involved in this process. You showed that already, and so I am just so uh, I'm a fanboy, um, of what you try to do, what you're trying to do, what you're part of, what you're leading. And yes, ma'am, you're leading. Whether as humble as you are leading, and I just
Absolutely.
want you to know how much we appreciate you. And so you're part of that third reconstruction, and as a result, old heads like me and Dee is not an old head like me, but
I'm close, Khalil.
uh,
We're in the same
yeah,
boat.
well, I would say, be people like us who have seen things really are heartened by young women, young people like you. And we won't even talk about the legacy of black women that you are proudly representing. I mean, it's just outstanding. So thank you so much for taking some time from your busy day to come and share with us, to participate in our community even for a short time. Because what's missing from what we want to make sure is happening, and again, Dee and Soul Sister are doing that. So making sure we expose people to what's happening in our community, and it doesn't get that kind of exposure, and uh, you are a symbol of what we're capable of doing, and we want other people as far beyond Texas to understand that you are not you're part of that group that's saying we ain't putting up with it anymore. We're not.
Yeah,
So thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank,
Thank you, Soul Sister, for the time, for putting us together, for bringing us together. I don't normally get here in the afternoon, but the minute I heard that um, Lauren Ashley was going to participate, I said, "Look, I got to go and listen." But I didn't want to leave without being able to tell you how proud, if you don't mind me saying, we are. And I know your mom is very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalil, and that's beautiful. Second everything that you said, and yes, as you said, we're old heads. I am a segregationist baby, like Khalil, and we have a couple of more speakers, BJ, and then Mark, and again, I want you guys to really look at the story of Clinton, Tennessee, and Oak Ridge, and Lauren, kind of. Spoke to the fact that she's aware that these things didn't just start. Again, why history is so important, why it is so important for us to be great advocates for the things that we are happening in our community that are affecting us or others in our community, as Lauren Ashley pointed to. You may not have a child in the school system, but you're probably paying property taxes. So it affects you. And it's important that we all understand those connections and that we all work to do what we can, because ultimately their plan, amongst many other things, it is definitely not to embolden or better our democracy. It is really quite the opposite. They are basically an authoritarian party. And as Lauren Ashley pointed out, the reason that they're taking over these areas are because they're easy, the railroad commissioner and the local school board and the librarian, but they're getting into areas of power. And make no mistake, they're looking at the ones where definitely there is a strong democratic voice and base there. Remember what they did here just recently in Nashville. Again, this is a red state, but Nashville, the city itself, is very blue, as is Memphis. It's We had a city council of 40, and they just arbitrarily cut it down to 20. Again, taking away our voice. This after they had already redistricted, the city, which had never been done in the history of the state. And so just keep your head on a swivel, guys. And I'm going to keep moving. Going to go to BJ and then Mark and Stephen. Mark, because I know that we want you, I know you're probably going to chime in on this, and I hope you do, but also some legal stuff. If you don't mind, can I let Stephen, who's the educator, go after BJ and then you, so we can kind of keep it, kind of together? All right, thank you. So BJ, then Steve, and Mark.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dee and Soul Sister, and everyone in the room. I just learned about Lauren Ashley, and I'm extremely proud of you. Um, I am a retired teacher. I've taught for 25 years and sub for 3 years in special ed, general ed, all at the elementary level. And my reason for going into education with a pre med background was because my son is intellectually challenged. And I had to be an advocate for him. So I have my master's in special education. Um, my goal is I'm going to start working or volunteering or doing whatever I can with the school board because I'm in Virginia and Glenn Youngkin is a Trumper and he distanced himself when he won the election so that people were fooled and they voted him in, which is what happened. Um, but I knew that he was a Trumper all along. So my goal is to start working at the school board level, volunteering or whatever, getting more information so that I can make sure, because this is spreading, just like you said. I don't want that here in Virginia. I don't want it anywhere in the United States. If the way they are cheating to take away our voice and our vote, their plan is this Project 2025. If any Republican, it doesn't have to be Trump or DeSantis, any Republican get in office, our voices, our vote is gone. And
And Vivek is actually verbalizing their 2025 project. I mean, he's talking about getting
exactly,
rid of people.
exactly. And I mean, they put it on Twitter. And then we have this situation with Mr. Musk. Who knows what side of the fence he's on? It seems like he's teeter tottering and the trust is just not there. So all of this is all coming together in a nice form to eliminate us. And I'm speaking of black, brown, marginalized people. I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not. I work too damn hard to help my son and students that were like him and the general population. I bust my butt to make sure my students who were in Title I schools to learn and apply and research and read and write and calculate. I am not going to stand by and let that happen. I'm just not. And on
Nope,
that
we're not
point,
going
I'll
back.
land my plane.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, BJ. We're not going back because I love what Lauren Ashley said. I have felt that very way for some time in my advocacy work, like some of the things that I advocate for and I'm concerned about. Yes, they touch me, but I may be able to handle them for myself. But I think about the people who are out there who don't have advocates. And that is also why, I love that we can come together and to talk about these things so we can all be advocates and kind of, as they used to say, kind of be fill in the gap and be a bridge for those who don't have that kind of advocacy personally to rely on. So thank you again so much, BJ. And again, honored by your presence and your work. And I have another wonderful voice that I love to hear from who is an educator. Stephen is next, and then Mark.
Hello, Dee. Hello, Soul Sister. Hello, Miss Lauren Ashley. I'm so honored to be speaking with you. Thank you all for having the space. Thank you, Mark, for letting me skip you. I'll try to be brief. I want to join the chorus, thanking you and honoring you for honoring us with your presence. I also want to apologize. I have not watched the viral video. I have been traveling. I've been with family. I'm down south. I'm from New York, but I'm in South Carolina. So I'm like all out of sorts. I'm in a red state, and I'm like always,
Keep your head on a swivel,
oh
Stephen.
my Lord, I'm safe, but I worry about what's going on down here. So it's a weird experience being a New Yorker down here. So I can't imagine what you go through all the time, and what you've had to be up against. But even for New York, I recognize the tale you're telling about, starting with the low levels of government and working their way up, and they've just had this 30-50 year plan to infiltrate and then take over and quietly rise up the ranks. And even on the college campuses, it's bizarre to see it happen, and now it's really played to a much higher degree than I could have imagined. The slow rise of the right wing. And I wanted to ask you, if this is maybe this is a rhetorical question, but I hope you're taking care of yourself. Are you taking care of yourself? And you sound so strong, and you're just so impressive. It's like you're a superhero. And I just never want, we're all human. So I just want to make sure that we're all asking you, like, go run for president, do all this stuff. And, just make sure that you've got the support, because I don't know you, but I don't want you to burn out either. So I hope that you've got your self-care in place, and you've got your community and your team, and you're taking your vitamins and drinking your water and taking your rest time, because you deserve it. And this is my real question was a complicated one. I've been a teacher, and I've worked in a charter school. I opened a charter school in New York City, and did that out of desperation, because as a teacher in the district school system, I couldn't teach the way I felt was appropriate, and my families were not, their needs weren't being met. And it wasn't the right wing. It was just the entrenched bureaucracy and decades of kind of decay, probably from a lack of care and support and funding that you're talking about now is happening in a very direct attack. We didn't have that in New York. We just had this decay. And so you had thousands, even hundreds of thousands in New York of black families opting out of the system because their neighborhood schools weren't working for them. And I saw what that looked like. That looked like racist people allowed to teach in classrooms, going unchecked, harming children. And so the balance of, well, how do you advocate for change and at the same time tell a family, well, no, don't go over there where they're making these shiny promises, because they don't have their best interest of your child in mind. But in New York, we've got this chain of charter schools called Success Academy, which is does things to children that I would never think any parent would allow, and yet hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of parents have chosen to keep their kids in those schools. So I guess the question is, balancing the complexity of clearly not wanting to get in bed with people who are harming children, but also recognizing the challenges that they are using as a weapon to break down the system further. And do you find that there are parents who, and I've taught briefly in Houston. I was trained as a teacher 25 years ago. I taught at Cage Elementary School. I'm not even sure if it's still open. I know it was really badly damaged by one of the floods, one of the hurricanes. But so I was challenging then, and I'm sure it's challenging now. Do you find that there's a complexity to it where there are real problems, and you find that these right-wingers who are bad faith actors are using the issues in the schools as a wedge to try and enact their agenda? Now it's clear how directly harmful it is. But, along the years in my work, they made some good promises and said nice things that, are not the case now. Just want to hear a reaction, and I'll be quiet and go back to listener. Thank you so much again for your time.
And thank you for that. That's a really thoughtful question. And it's something I struggle with. So to your first question, I'll say no, I'm not doing the best job of self-care. So much recently so that I looked up one day and I was like, oh, I've only had like 2 matcha lattes for meals. I need to probably like eat something. I'm trying my best to do better. And that's just like organizer stuff. Like I take care of everybody else and not myself, and I have to learn to put my mask on first. So thank you
And
for
I'm so
calling
glad
me
that he
on
said
that.
that.
No, I'm very thankful because it's really something that I need to get better at. But your second question and point is something that I struggle with, right? And so this is my mindset. So like I'm from Third Ward, right? That's a black neighborhood in Houston, one of the oldest historic areas. And so when people think of like black neighborhoods, a lot of times you just think of the hood. And so what I tell people, if you haven't been in the hood, you don't understand the hood. The hood is not a monolith. We have some really affluent areas and families within certain parts, depending on how your city is structured. And then we have some very, very, under resourced, intentionally kind of neglected areas. And so for me, I grew up as one of those, like I come from I'm not trying to be funny, but I come from a bougie black family. I grew up in Jack and Jill. But my parents were older, and so they had both experienced different forms of educational segregation. My father being a child in East Texas, my mother actually, my grandmother was a teacher. She helped integrate a school here in Houston called Shern Elementary, and so my mother had to go to school with where her mother was a teacher at, and so she had to deal with her own forms of discrimination. And so they were just very intentional about like, yeah, we could bus you across town. We could pay for private school. But, for one, these schools are in our neighborhood. Two, these are our sorority sisters, our fraternity brothers who are the teachers and administrators in these schools. We're going to put you with people that look like you and people we know. And so that's why I went to school in my neighborhood. And so at a very early age, I knew, I kind of figured out my life is a little different from my friends. There's some things that are easier for me, some things I have access to that, for whatever reason, my friends don't. And having that perspective is the reason why I'm so intentional about putting my kids in our neighborhood schools. But that doesn't mean that doesn't come with a sacrifice, right? So both of my children are brilliant, but my son is one of those textbook straight A students. He's AP, so his GPA is super high. He tests really well. And no parent should have to be a martyr. But I literally tell people, I was like, yeah, I don't want to bus my kid across town at 5 a.m. But also a little part of me knows that teacher needs my kid in her class because she knows at the very least, that's one guaranteed kid that's going to pass. And not to put us on a pedestal to say that we're just really great parents or anything, but, we are pretty nerdy and we've learned how to beat tests pretty early. That's just something I've always been good at, and my kids have acquired that same skill. Saying all of that to say, I put my children in our neighborhood schools at a sacrifice because I know that I can supplement and supplant a little bit what they're going to miss out on. There's not a lot of drama and music happening in the hood. That's okay. I'm going to put you in a program over the summer. I'm going to pay for some music classes. I have friends who have kids. I'm a young mom. I'm 35. My son is 16. My oldest child is 16. They are not going to make those same decisions because they don't have that same level of access, resource, or political analysis. What they're able to say is this school in my neighborhood is not offering what I think my kids should have. I'm putting them on a bus or I'm sending them to a charter. I cannot fault an individual for making a decision that they think is the best for their child. I don't agree with it because, for one, I have the privilege and the time to read books and walk out and be nerdy and understand that this is a part of a larger systemic problem. Two, I know that, like I said, again, I have the resources to fill in some of those gaps. What has always bothered me about this, though, is when you look around Houston, for example, charter schools are literally kind of only in the neighborhoods that we're in. You don't see a lot of KIPS in some of these other charter schools in affluent areas. They intentionally build next door, across the street, down the street, from schools that have some of the lower test scores or are under enrolled. And so when you have had like what we call finger quotes benign neglect happening for decades, these schools are self-fulfilling prophecies. Yeah, the test scores aren't great. Yeah, they are under enrolled because instead of the state of Texas saying we're going to make sure that all of these schools are adequately resourced, we're going to do this thing called school choice. So yeah, the school in Third Ward might be crap, but guess what? You can bus your kid across town. What does that do? It leaves our schools and our neighborhoods even more under resourced. But then it also creates this problem for those people in those affluent schools that say, hey, we don't want all these kids from out of the neighborhood coming to our schools. So what do? They scrape up their dollars and they put their kids in private schools, or they support politicians like Greg Abbott, our governor, who's been on tour like Beyonce for the better part of a year, going to these affluent communities and saying, hey, wouldn't you like an $8,000 voucher to put your kid in private school? So parents get all of these messages about how terrible our public schools are and how much better these charter and private schools are. As a person who loves your child, you're going to try to make that best decision. I mean, real estate agents literally sell homes based off how good the schools are in the area. So there's a whole political there's a whole political reason around why you want to have test scores and these statewide standard systems where you can be able to like say, hey, look, the schools in this neighborhood are good. Come build a house out here. Come live out here. So, like I said again, saying all of that and understanding the real challenges that parents are faced with, it is hard for me to be so critical of individuals making choices. My problem is truly with the system because of what has been allowed to happen for so long. Like these schools just didn't become this way overnight. When my mom was a student at my high school, it was over enrolled. The band had, 300 kids in it. It was a vibrant community school. Jack Yates was a premier, high school in Third Ward. It looks very different now that my child is a student there because of just what has happened over time. And so, again, like I said, I don't fault people who go in with the best intentions to say this system is not working. I'm going to create something better to serve the families, or individually as a parent, I'm going to do the best thing for my child. I think what we have to try to do a better job is really helping people develop the political analysis to say, look, if all of us in our neighborhood send our kids to this school here, then we have a little bit more control and say so over what's going on, and we can advocate and we can stand in the gap. Why that's hard is because you don't want to have to be a martyr. You don't want to have to be an activist, a parent. You just want to be able to wake up, take your kids to the school in your neighborhood, hope for the best, and then go on about your life. And so you're asking parents who are invested in their child individually to be, community advocates, and that's really hard. And so again, like I said, I'm being very long-winded because this is stuff that I've been shouting from the rooftops for a long time, kind of into the void, and now I have an audience. But that's what it is. And I think a lot of people who teach at charter schools, a lot of people who start these schools, really do so with the best intention. They really want to, impart wisdom in a child and really instill a love for learning. But because I have to always think about what happens to the kid who can't be in the charter school, that child who needs services, that child who's a behavioral problem. They're not going to be able to be in a charter school. A charter school doesn't have to accept them. So what happens when they're in their community neighborhood public school that's also under resourced? They don't fare that well either. And so I'm always thinking about who slips in the cracks. I'm always thinking about the most marginalized people who don't have those options. But again, thank you for being a teacher. Thank you for your service. And really thank you for thinking about a solution to a problem that you should not have had to fix.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful question, Stephen, and a beautiful answer, Lauren Ashley, because I think about it too. Because as you said, we all want the best for our kids. And sometimes I'm not going to get mad at someone who is making a decision that is in the best interest of their child. But, us being aware of how it affects our overall community is important. And sometimes what happens in my research and some of these charters and vouchers, because see, we're in the beginning full swing mode now, because our governor made in his state of the state address last year, this was his priority, partnering with Hillsdale College. And yes, you want to talk about KIP, you know, charter schools and stuff and where they're placed. Yeah. So he announced this. This was part of his State of the State address, and he went on tour with the founder of that network school, the Hillsdale Charter Network School. And it was only because of some faux pas that this Hillsdale representative made in saying things actually disparaging Tennessee educators and the school, and it got kind of amplified, and they kind of pulled back a little bit, because what they also did, and this is where you see your power being taken away, because when he made that State of the State address, announcing that he was partnering with Hillsdale, and he wanted 100 charter schools, new charter schools here in Tennessee. Keep in mind, Betsy DeVos moved here too. And so she's one of his cheerleaders too, advocating for not only charter schools, but religious, charter schools. So the instituted also a commission that was appointed by the governor. Okay. So these charter schools have to get permission to go into these different districts. And so when several districts said, no, we don't want you here, the charter school went to the commission to get it overturned. And they were about to do that until there was a lot of uproar. And some of that uproar came from Republican counties, because they recognized that their own voice was being taken
Hmm.
away. So I just wanted to thank you for, like, speaking to it so
And
eloquently and pointing out the
and
fact
that's the
that these
interesting.
charter schools are placed in low income areas and communities on purpose.
And that's the interesting thing about too, where we see where we say politics make strange bedfellows, because a lot of the pushback against vouchers here in Texas has come from these smaller rural areas, these rural districts, because the school district, like any government entity, is the largest employer in town. Most people work for the district in some capacity, either as an instructional staff person, cafeteria, whatever. And so they know for sure, if those vouchers are implemented and people have the option to pull their kids and go other places, that's going to affect their bottom line, and that's going to affect their local economy. And another example where I've seen, this happen is when I worked for the union, and our governor, as a way to get rid of the teachers union, because the teachers union stands in front of a lot of this public education dismantling. People think, oh, they just are, there to defend their jobs, but a lot of what they do is advocacy for students. And so, to get rid of the teachers union as the thorn in his side, he was willing to sign a bill that basically removed payroll deductions for anybody who was in a union. And that's the easiest way to pay into the union, is for it to come directly out of your checks. What saved us at that time was so many rural superintendents from schools and other public employers that said, hey, please leave payroll deduction alone. We already have a hard time recruiting talent against the larger cities. If they don't have union protection, these people won't come out to these small areas to work. They won't come out here to teach. And so that's always interesting to see how, when we talk about politics, for example, where even conservative constituents aren't getting what they need, because these folks don't answer to their own constituents. They answer to a dollar, they answer to the bottom line. And that's why culture wars are so important to the Republican platform, because they know a lot of their policies just don't work for working people. But what they can get you riled up about is abortion rights, or they can get you riled up about worrying about, trans people playing sports, because that's something that, you might have some type of whatever feeling about, but they know on its face these policies that they support around public education, around working class people, just doesn't resonate even with their own base. And so that's another reason why I do so much work in the community to really push back against some of those issues that seem unrelated. And I ask people, I said, let me tell you, before you get on your high horse about your religion or whatever you think, I want you to be very mindful of who's making your life hard. Don't give me a culture war boogeyman that you probably never even interacted with. I want you to think about why you'll be working till you're 85, probably as a Walmart greeter because we don't have pensions or defined benefit plans. And think about who's actually causing you harm and why they want you to be mad at something or somebody that has no bearing over your life.
Absolutely. And that is a very good question to put to people who, as you said, bring up these straw boogeymen that they have created for the culture war that they're stirring. So it has been such a wonderful conversation today. I knew it would be when you were here. I was so excited, and I'm very excited to hear from our next speaker who keeps us up to date and grounded in the legal things that are going on. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our advocacy arena legal expert, Mark. You have the floor.
Well, yes, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me, Dee and Soul Sister. I actually have a question for you, Miss Lauren Ashley, from Houston, Texas, like my family. Um, Third Ward, as a matter of fact, way back. Um, I'm going to talk about the legal remedies, or whether they've been exhausted or not. Um, I know that the Supreme Court recently decided that the Texas Education Agency can do what they did and take over the Houston School District, because of my understanding is it was one failing school, even
Hmm.
though the district had improved overall from 2019, which was their first attempt, and it's based upon a law that had changed in 2015, where if one
Yep.
school was failing, they could take over. And they failed in 2019. So my first question is, what was the difference since the law was from 2015? How were we victorious in 2019 and not in 2023? Is it just because that one judge was appointed? That's my first question. The second question is, are there any other legal remedies that you and your team are exploring in addition to all the other stuff that you're doing on the ground? Is there anything that can be done as far as law, especially if any changes they make to the school district now, as far as curriculum, do not have a logical nexus to actual test scores being improved? For instance, like if they want to change the Black history curriculum like Florida did, how was that connected to the reason why they took over anyway? You understand the question?
Yeah. And so kind of to that point, and so I just kind of want to, say this. The school that was in question that was failing actually had improved their standing as well. But most in our most recent legislative session, they changed those requirements again on how we judge schools. So without any changes to the school itself, just based on this system that we're using, schools that were like B, for example, will probably be ranked as a C now. Now, like I say, the kids, the test scores, nothing has changed but the metrics, and that's something that has happened over time. They, like I said before, they play with those to kind of be able to create this narrative around, these failing schools. And so I think, to your point about what's different now is, like I had said before, our governor has been on tour, literally on tour, and I'm not exaggerating. He's been going to different private schools and different affluent communities, and basically having like these rallies and town halls to get parents on board with vouchers, and to get them to call their legislators and demand vouchers, because there's not a lot of political will on either side, but even on his within his own party to push for these vouchers. This is not something that's popular, and so he's trying to use his bully pulpit. And so to make that a little easier, there was a little bit more will to take over this school district then right now than before. It's wildly unpopular, but as we've seen with our governor, when he wants his way about something, he will do what he has to do. He will call special sessions. I think he's actually going to call. I think this will be the third special session in October where he's going to drag legislators back to Austin because he wants this voucher bill passed. And I think this time the voucher bill will be directly connected to teachers' raises because they have not been able to get raises passed in the legislature. He won't sign a bill because he wants vouchers at all costs. So that's kind of what is different now, maybe versus then. I think too, the pandemic gave us a great natural disaster. To be able to show, because this was Mike Smiles' presentation, he was showing us test scores where kids, I guess had dipped a little bit. And I asked him, I said, well, what was going on globally? What was happening in the world in 2020 where, people might not be able to perform as well at bubbling in bubbles as they had previously? And, to not even acknowledge this mass disabling event that traumatized, a good number of our population, and to not take that into account as to where we're talking about test scores, which again, I won't get on my soapbox about what I feel a standardized test should be used for. Like I said, gave ground for this takeover to happen. I think,
Absolutely. And the pandemic also gave rise to the Moms for Liberty. Okay.
yeah, oh, for sure. And we saw this happen with Hurricane Katrina. And so I use New Orleans as an example of what a state takeover can do, because it's our next door neighbor. But I also was in school with a lot of those kids when they had to come to Houston. A lot of them came to my high school. And I remember, like, I knew that they were traumatized, but I remember them talking about how hard our school was. And this is my, neighborhood school in Third Ward that everybody thought, we were just a dropout factory. And to hear these kids from New Orleans talk about how rigorous and how difficult our school was, I was like, wow, that's weird. And so when I started to investigate and learn more about the system that they had in New Orleans and how most of those kids were in private school. And Hurricane Katrina was a natural disaster that helped exacerbate the issue around their public schooling, because what happened when those kids and those people left New Orleans? The charter schools moved in. And so when they returned home, they left from a very weak public system and they returned home to something that was virtually non-existent. And so that's what I know they would love to do in Houston. It's a little bit harder because we are such a large city. But what you do is, it's going to take Mike Miles a couple of years to actually destroy HISD. But what you can do in the meantime is destroy public perception. You make people lose faith in the system, that the public system can educate their kids. And so people will just naturally start to pull their children out. And that's kind of where we are right now. As far as legal remedies, I am not an attorney, so I'm not, as much as I would love to go to law school, I'm not in law school at the moment. I'm not exactly sure what we can do. What we are doing, though, right now is we're trying to get the Department of Education and maybe in the Department of Justice, depending on where we're going with some of these discriminatory practices that are happening that Mike Miles is implementing, to see if they can step in and do something, because Mike Miles has said, I don't mind losing federal funding about not meeting the standards around like special education and offering dual language and bilingual programming, for example. He's doing away with some of these other programs that really make the public education system attractive, whereas charter schools just don't have the resources to offer some of these programs to students. And he has openly, verbally said, I know that the federal government will ding me for this. We will lose funding, and I'm fine with that. And so we're using that as, as kind of like an alarm, trying to ring the alarm to say, hey, this man has clearly said he does not mind losing critical services that our students need. Somebody has to step in and help us. So that's kind of where we are now. I just wrote a letter this morning to the Department of Education secretary, and as a series of letters we're trying to send off to say, hey, there's a number of violations happening here. What can be done? Because again, like I said earlier, about 20 contractors were, told that their services were no longer needed, but they're also not hiring staff to fill those positions. So you're going to have children who have ADHD. You're going to have children who are autistic. You're going to have children who are dyslexic not receiving services. And I don't know how you can justify that in a public government taxpayer run system.
Last question. Wasn't the services, the educational services to disabled students, a major factor in the takeover? Wasn't that what they argued to the Texas Supreme Court?
Part of the justification. So a few years ago, there was a report that came out basically that talked about how under resourced and really just frankly how much of a hot mess special education services were in Houston ISD. A lot of it, was kind of just mismanagement and malfeasance just within the district itself, but that was sourced from the turnover of superintendents. We had about 3 or 4 superintendents within a short span of time, and then again that critical and intentional under resourcing of the school district, where our district we have this thing. It's a Robin Hood law where larger districts like HISD have to kind of like use some of their resources and it be distributed to smaller rural districts. But what we know about places like Houston is it's always a tale of two cities, where you have very affluent parts of our cities, but you have also very low income and low resource areas. And so while, on paper, HISD seems like this very, very rich district, these resources are not evenly distributed. So you have campuses where they're sitting on, not only just the money that they get from the district and the state, but also these really like huge PTO war chests. Whereas you come to the schools in my children's neighborhood and in our neighborhood and the schools that my kids attend, where the principal is trying to decide if I'm going to have a drama teacher or hire another math specialist. And so again, to your point, yes, that was the justification used to say, hey, this district is not managing, this special education services. Children are not getting the services that they need. Somebody needs to come and do something. And so to say, oh, well, actually, it's not that big of an issue, really is disingenuous. And again, it's why I say, and I keep saying that this takeover is illegitimate, even though the law, allows it to happen. Slavery was legal at one time. You can create a law for anything, but also that it's illegitimate. It's a truly illegitimate takeover that's politically motivated. And it really is frustrating.
Thanks
Great
for that. I
questions,
appreciate you. I
Mark.
appreciate the answering. Appreciate that. What last? What? And now I'm done with this. I'm done here. What do you think is their end game? What's the end game as far as being on the ground and having been so involved the last few years? What's the end game here?
I think just right in front of us, the end game is to just dismantle public education as much as possible. What I tell people all the time, I'm always weary of anybody who looks at education, healthcare, and the prison system as a way to get rich. Those are things that we need in our
I
society.
knew I loved you.
Right.
It's just those are just not, and so when we think about over time, how we've lost how the loss of like union density, for example, directly correlated to us losing pensions and defined benefit plans. You see it in a lot of ways that there are people who are very rich who want to get even richer, and they look at public resources, they look at the public good, things that we rely on that our government to do, as a pool of money that they want to get their hands into. The thing
Corporate
about it is
welfare.
corporate, that's exactly what it is. And the thing, as much as we don't like, and I tell people, as much as you're scared of the government and the public sector, you should be even more terrified of the private sector, because at the very least, the government's goal is to not make money. The private sector is for profit. That's what their goal is. It's profit margins. And so at the expense of anything else, they have to make money. The government, even though, obviously they, think people are greedy as individuals, the government is really not designed to make money, and it's not a business. And I was like, when we look at it as a business and we try to talk about efficiency and stuff, that harms us as citizens, because sometimes the government services we need are just going to cost money, and they're not going to be super efficient in that way if you're looking at it from a cost analysis. But the people who are telling us that we're spending too much money are the very same people that want that money in their pockets. They don't want us to have defined pension plans. For example, they want us to have 401ks so they can play with our money in the stock market. And like I said, I'm getting a little bit too far off and going all over the place, but that's really the end goal, is to keep that money for themselves. They don't want us on food stamps, but they also want to be able to subsidize their own children's private educations or their trips to Martha's Vineyards. And they're going to do so with our tax dollars.
Exactly.
Preach. All right.
Exactly.
I am
Uh,
seriously having a fangirl moment. I am not kidding you.
I'm
I,
telling you, it's
I
like I just
mean,
want to hug her, hug her, hug her. It's like-
seriously. Oh my God, kindred spirits. I so appreciate you speaking to unions and pensions and organizing and all of that, because what you're so correct. You know, the private sector is all about making money off of us and taking money from us to make that money off of us. And you said it so perfectly. You said it so graciously and plainly. There's no way anyone could be confused by what you're saying right now, and it's just it's refreshing to hear it from someone who isn't always in advocacy arena every day. So it lets us know there's more of us out there. The world is really bigger than just this space, and this growing community. And I hope that we can see more of you within our
Absolutely.
community. Yes.
Absolutely. I heard her talking about unions. I see you speaking Gwen's language there. So I love it. And she does, like you said, she has a full command and understanding of, the things that she speaks to. And she does it with such passion and so authentically. And we love you for that. So I did have a speaker up that we lost. I know maybe um, Twitter, or maybe they had to go. But we're going to move. Allie is here, and then we have a new speaker. And we're going to be getting to our wind up stage. But, I can go another 30, 40 minutes if anyone would like to come up and join, contribute to the wonderful, wonderful conversation that we have had, and all of the wonderful knowledge that Lauren Ashley has, so graciously shared with us today. I tell you, I just can't thank you enough. So, without further ado, I'm going to go to the next speaker, which is Ali, and then Benazirs. I hope I didn't butcher that too badly. You can correct me. And I'm going to bring Davina up. So, Ali, how are you? Long time no see, friend.
Hey, you guys, how's everybody doing? Am I coming through?
Yes,
Are
you are. So glad to
Ugh.
hear your voice.
Good, good. Good to hear you guys too. Oh, that was so inspiring to hear you, Lauren Ashley. Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness. I was just basking in your voice. Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for all your work and for joining this community. And we hope to see you here a lot. Thank you so much. And I don't want to turn the discussion away from that. I just
But give us some geopolitics if you've got them, because
yeah,
I've been missing that. Is
yeah, I did want
okay.
to tell you. Yeah, and things that we can really apply to like US politics as we watch things unfold across the world. You know how people seem to be so confused about the quote Latino vote in the United States? Well, there was a huge election victory in Guatemala this weekend, which was a centrist kind of academic guy who had no money whatsoever was was elected by a landslide against going against Trump backed right wingers that have been in power but via the army for a couple of decades now. And Guatemala is a place where I have close friends have been quite a bit, and they didn't even have money for billboards. And he got like 90% of the vote. This guy who's a centrist, and it is really he ran on an anti-corruption, basically, a democratic ideology, and just going back towards we're going to promote democracy for everybody and in our foreign policy, and we're going to attempt to not be used as a pawn and blah blah blah. So with a clearness of mind, and the guy has like a degree in economics and a degree in he speaks several languages, and he's very he's just a different he brings with him a variety of study of world politics that often doesn't come into what may be a pattern of kind of strong arm, military backed political parties in Latin America. So, and Guatemala has been through a horrendous history with genocide of indigenous people in recent decades, actually. So it is a really big thing, and it's with a clarity of mind. And as I was looking at the different coverage of it, it made me kind of laugh because people in the English speaking world, not in the Spanish speaking world, but in the English speaking world, they were confusing the idea of what it means to be progressive versus what it means to be democratic. So in Guatemala, they're saying he's progressive, meaning he's bringing progress away from these military dictators. The old what progressive used to mean to us here, before it got hijacked, and it has nothing to do with what, like, the Jill Steins and Bernie Sanders and all this. It has to do with turning away from militarism and turning towards democracy. And for a country that has suffered so much under military rule, for the general population to rise up and spontaneously say no, the same way that happened in Brazil, where the the general population said no, we're not going to have another round of Bolsonaro. And it's kind of like, people seem to forget that Trump lost. He lost to Biden. The same Bolsonaro lost. And here we have another in Guatemala, a place where there's been much suffering. The right wing party lost hugely. And when you see those, if you see some of I just posted up 2 little articles there, but when you see those blue, white, blue flags, those are just Guatemalan flags. They're not connected to left. They're not connected to right. They're just connected to the country. Like, this is our democracy. We want it to be a democracy, and here we go. And they did not even have money for billboards, people. This was all done word of mouth. Huge
Grassroots,
victory.
real
Huge,
grassroots.
yeah, huge victory. So when we talk about, like, the different ways that media gets manipulated in the United States, including in Latino communities, and the way we talk about it, the media talks about South Florida. They talk about Texas. They talk less about the Southwest because it's very interesting, because when you look at Latin America, where many refugees are coming into the United States, and people tend to think that they're afraid of socialists or whatever, they're not even using the word socialist in Guatemala right now. They're just saying, let's go towards fairness. Let's go towards democracy. Let's treat each other well. And that will be progress, because that'll be the greater good for everybody. Let's go away from people using power to mistreat each other. And it's very encouraging. I know Guatemala is a small country, but they have suffered hugely. And they've been under for the population to rise up and say, we're not taking this anymore, we want it to go towards the center, is really important. So I just wanted to bring that up. And
Well, thank you. I have been missing your geopolitical updates. I've been, of course, following them. And because you mentioned Guatemala in one of our earlier spaces, we have a gun violence problem here. We have actually a special session that is going on here in Nashville to address it, which they're not. They have already been, our governor has already folded to the lobbyists and the right-wing Freedom Caucus that we have here in our legislature. But we have, a gun violence issue here in our state and in our country. And for a long time, we have been saying that this was an American problem. But, just like our democracy has been copied and followed and used as a blueprint for other countries, I'm afraid that we are now beginning to export our gun issue, because I posted in the space last week about there being an uptick in the export of guns to Guatemala, and Thailand in particular. And these are already countries that already have issues of violence and unrest. And so, not only are we, not able to take care of our own, we want to make sure that we spread it across the globe. So, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And also, an article that I saw in France talking about, well, kind of immigration, tying it to that is that Saudi Arabia is really creating, they're really inflicting some really bad atrocities on immigrants from Yemen.
Yeah.
On them
Yeah.
crossing the border there, and it seems to be they've been doing it for a while. It seems to be really, really escalating, and I'm hoping that it gets some national attention because
Mhm.
these are people from Ethiopian immigrants, and so thank
And
you again.
well, let me just catch up a little bit on what's happening then over in this European and in the African continent.
Okay, if you
The
can do it in
things.
5 minutes, so we can.
Okay,
I
so
got
things
another
that.
speaker, and then I want to start wrapping up. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So just the things that don't seem to cross the language divide between former French colonies and former, other colonies. France is losing influence on the ground in a number of different African, countries, and people are voting and people are rising up against French control in former colonies. And that influences how much violence there is on the ground and how many refugees, how many people are leaving violence zones. So you have this split in the Arab communities, whether they're going to welcome fellow Muslims into their communities or not. And you can see that it's not as clear. There's economic issues absolutely involved in who's welcomed in and who's not, as is always the case. So anyway, that's also something that's going on, and that's part of the reason that France 24 was covering that story, because they've been talking about the role of former colonies and then countries that have been trying to, move out from underneath the control of those European colonies, even though they are supposedly free countries, and then what the other countries in the world who may have connections through other cultural and or religious reasons, why they are accepting and not accepting people. It often has to do with flow of money and arms. And then
Absolutely.
and whether they need like certain types of employment. Certain people will be allowed in and others won't. So I'll just stop there. But thanks so much. It's really great to talk to you guys. And just a little.
You too, and I hope that you will be able to join us next week. I know you've had some things going on, connection problems or whatever, but again, it was so nice to be able to hear you and to get that update. And I want to keep our conversation moving. I'm going to go to our new speaker who is next, and please help me pronounce your name.
Actually, you were close. My name is Benazir Khan. Actually, I am the brains and creator of Benazir's blog. It's a well, I write about food, so, and I also write about my turbulent family and everything else like that because I'm also a child abuse survivor, and this is just like and anybody who reads my blog and everything else like that, you can probably see, what. And sometimes I do bash people in politics too, especially if it gets to be about too much. I'm also a resistor, and I speak 6 languages. I came from a German immigrant family, and my mother instilled in me, of course, it's just like a lot of immigrant parents, instilled that me getting an education. My mother actually wanted me to become a doctor, which is crazy. Her grave is right down the street from my old high school, so it's pretty much fitting. But it's just like the last so-called administration. I want to say we had no government for the last 4 years from from this so-called idiot that called himself being the president. He's it's just like, and actually, I'm glad he was indicted, and and I pray to God that he isn't goes to jail. Honestly, I can't stand him, and especially about Betsy DeVos. She was really messing up even more so the education system and everything else like that. And what they want to do is they want to sit there, they want to strip everything from us, all of our rights and everything else like that. And I call them the Republican Party because it is exactly just what they are. And they do a lot of horrible, crazy stuff. And it's just like one thing. And the bullshit that my mother seen in Germany when Hitler came into power and everything else like that is the same type of bullshit that I seen here, and I really didn't like it. And it gives me the creeps just even thinking about it.
Well, it's
And
definitely show it. I think one of the historians that I follow, who lives here locally, John Meacham, he's and many others have probably said this, but history may not repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes, and we see a lot of rhyming going on.
exactly, and if you're not careful, it will repeat itself.
Oh,
And
absolutely, which is why
and
they're trying to
and
destroy history classes.
exactly. And one thing, I know what was going on. Okay, I don't like what was done to the Native Americans either. Okay. And it's just like one thing. It's just like one thing. I had a hard time in my life when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter and
Hey,
everything. And
Benazar,
a couple, and
I'm
a couple
so
of Native
glad that
American sisters had helped me. Honestly,
I'm so glad that you joined us today. And like I said, we're about to wrap up, and we have a special guest here with us. We don't always. And so I want to keep it focused on education if we can, and give you an opportunity to just kind of have some closing thoughts or direct a question to Lauren Ashley, who is our special guest. On education today. So if you could do that, we're going to start to wrap it up. But I thank you for joining us so much, and I hope that you join us again.
yeah. But Betsy DeVos was trying to sit there and push charter schools and everything else like that, and everything, and and trying to shaft people from getting public education, which is really terrible. I mean, this is my opinion. I've been to Pakistan and everything else like that 3 times to visit my in-laws over there. And it's just like, and it's very, very unfair is that the rich kids can sit there and go to school, and the poor kids are made to suffer and not have that degree of education that the rich kids can easily partake in. And it's just like it's very unequal.
Very much so, and I think they're trying to replicate those same things here. And Lauren spoke to a lot of those things. And as I said, we're in our final wrap up stage. So before we lose Lauren Ashley, I want to thank her again. I'm sorry, we have one more speaker, Davina, and then I'm going to give Lauren Ashley an opportunity to have some closing words, and my fabulous co-host, if there is anyone, if LMZ and BJ wanted to have, I see my phone is acting funny. So, okay, yeah, I think we'll let them speak. Davina, LMZ, and then Lauren with some final words.
Thank you so much, Dee. I'm only going to be 1 minute because I wanted to thank the speaker, Miss Lauren Ashley, so much, and repeat what I was taking away as one powerful piece of language to use, which is she said that they want to take public institutions and divert the money into their private pockets, because that was such an excellent summary of what a lot of the end goal is of all the techniques and strategies to whip up and fearmonger over trans people, over minorities, over pretending that the US is being invaded, and concealing that the US is highly dependent on migrant labor, etc. So all of those things, she detailed her approach of saying to people, who is getting in the way of you living your best life? Who is I can't, and that's what I wanted to just ask her again, if she could repeat, or she has a memory of how she phrased that, to say that question she asked people, something like, who is getting in the way of your best life right now? Just because it was such a powerful sounding strategy to refocus people, and is part of the tool basket I always want to add to of what we do in the face of fascism, which is not just complain about it, not just draw people's attention to strategy, but actively work on using their own human nature to remind them to connect to logic, sound logic, and not confected, fear-mongered, fascist, fabricated logic. That's all from me. I'll land my plane. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Ashley.
Thank you, Sabina. I appreciate you so very much, and thank you for those wonderful reminders and your musings always on from the overview, from a broad view. So I appreciate you so much. I'm going to go to LMZ, then Dawn, and then Ashley and my fabulous co-host. And again, I just want to thank all of you for being here. Please share, retweet this space. Lauren has been excellent. I do think that it's a conversation worthy of being shared and amplified. And so we're going to continue with LMZ, Dawn, Ashley, and Gwen.
Hi, I'll be real brief, Miss D and Soul Sister. Thank you for bringing me back up. I just wanted to myself again thank Lauren Ashley for her time today. I imagine how busy she is as a mom, and then also doing this advocacy and activism work on the ground can be so time consuming. And so I wanted to thank you so much. And then I just wanted to say, because hopefully this space will be shared and retweeted widely by everyone who's in here making good trouble. Silence is complicity. Silence is complicity. Silence is acceptance. Silence is complicity and being complicit. And the fact that you, Lauren Ashley, are using your voice is, the most powerful tool that we have. And while everyone might not have the gift, you've been given the gift of a beautiful voice, not just your speaking voice, the tone, the tenor, the power, and the passion behind it that make you an incredible advocate, that make you an incredible activist. And, everyone might not have that gift, and that's okay. Everyone has the power to use their voice in some way. We are all holding an incredible computer in the palm of our hand. And it goes with us in the car, and it goes with us everywhere we go. And that allows us to, even if we're not using our verbal voice, it allows us to send text messages and emails to legislators, school board members. It allows us to communicate as high as the United States Supreme Court, all the way down to our local dog catcher. It allows us to make phone calls. It allows us to use our voices. There are constant ways to communicate with these groups of people who are every day doing the things that you talked about to specifically harm and target our children, to disenfranchise particularly Black children from getting the education that they need, poor children the education that they need without question, disabled children or children with special needs the education that they need, and then without going off into the deep end, layer after layer after layer of American citizen, whether it's our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community to senior citizens living in substandard long-term care nursing homes. We should not be quiet. And they are able to do this because we are quiet. And you were so powerful that day because you have that power, but because it showed the power of when we are not quiet. And so again, courage is not doing something without having any maybe concern or reservation, maybe a little bit of fear sometimes or anxiety, but it's the fact of doing it in spite of it. It's doing it in spite of it. And so you stood up to people that and still know do not have good intentions for your children and the children across the Houston school district. And you stood there in your power and used your voice to say, no, not on my watch. And if more of us across this country would do that, everywhere we could. I think that things could change. I think the tide could change. I wish that there were more Lauren Ashleys in this country, not because you're not one in a million and you're never to be recreated, of course not, but I wish there were more citizens that found that courage in their voice. And so I encourage other people, if you don't have Lauren's voice, you do have a way to text school board members. You do have a way to call school board members. My mom is 73 years old. She goes to school board meetings in her rural Virginia county where she doesn't have a child or a grandchild in that school system. You have a right to go to any school board meeting where you live, where you are paying taxes. You can be there. So you should know the names of these people where you live. You should have their phone numbers and email addresses taped onto your refrigerator, and you should be able to use this phone that right now we're using it for such good to be able to connect with Lauren Ashley and connect with each other in Advocacy Arena every Monday. You should be able to do it to make some good trouble and have your voice be heard, to let these people know, not on my watch. And with that, I will land my plane.
Beautiful flight it was, my dear, as I know that you always will. I love everything that you said. Dawn, you're up next, and then I'm going to give Lauren Ashley an opportunity to give us some closing thoughts and words, and then my fabulous co-host.
Fangirl Dawn here again. I just wanted to thank you for coming. Thank you for just stopping by. This is a wonderful collective community, and we would hope to just see you again. And if there is anything that any of us can do to more than just amplify your message or rotate, if there are letters, phone banking, texting, like Shauna has spearheaded before in the past for the midterms, anything that we can do to help you with these letters. Some of us have family and friends and in Texas, in Houston as well. Whatever we can do. And I also wanted to put out there to you now I'm not sure about all the rules in Texas. I know most cities. I'm also in a blue dot in a red state in the South. What they have chosen to do, because the governor in Alabama had decided to divert $300 million of funds to a private prison, quietly, mostly behind closed doors. Not many people heard about it because they know how to scrub that from the media. Um, but what this city has done, we've made it into a municipality, the city that I reside in. It was a part of Greater Mobile County, but they've decided, okay, they're not going to assault our children this way. And what they have chosen to do is use their property taxes. It only takes 51% in Alabama. I'm not sure about Texas, I would say, but majority, most states are like a 50, in between like a 51 and to 60%. If something like that, I hope would be able to be done. It does have some political advantages, but some annexation that is required. But if that helps, because now 72% of our taxes now, and to get people to understand, to pay more property taxes to put into the school system. But it is made for a better. They are now the fourth best school system in the public school system in the state. So if that's something that can be done there, if there's anything initiative that we can help you with, please let us know. Please come back and just to tell you your power and that allude to what LMZ said. You're living. I visit your page often. I don't know if you know it, but Prager University has a promoted
Mm.
uh, promoted advertisement on your page today, and I just figure I find that strange. That's your power and that's your good trouble. So please keep doing what you're doing. I'll still be that one. Everybody in here knows because we're basically family. I will push the needle. If you see something in politics for future to come across the red state lines and to amplify, you will have a charge ready to back you in all directions. But I just, this supplemental curriculum they have here, this what they call edutainment, which is also now available free. You don't need to download the app. You can watch the episodes in the state of Florida. They're under assault. So, like you said, there's so many ways that they are coming under attack. Virginia, I don't know if you all saw these militias are at standing in front of the school building
Mm-hmm.
in Virginia, and we have heard nothing from Youngkin, nothing about it. Like this is just okay. Manning the schools, standing outside, so they have their ways. But if you need any help in that area, I still would love to see you in politics. But thank you so much for coming in. Please come back to this collective community. It's a rich family-like atmosphere. We've been together for a long time. Most of us in spaces have started, and just thank you for your time. And I just want you to know about your power. You're doing something.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And thank you for bringing that up. Like, you guys are so good. Like, I don't even have to do some things because I know somebody in the collective is going to take care of it. And I am glad that you told her about the power of our collective, like, in helping to amplify the work that she's doing, because I know she mentioned that petition. You need some more signatures on there, like hook us up with the link. We will get it amplified and rotated for you. Like I said, give us call to actions. We are not just keyboard warriors or voices, talking in the void about what, the problem is. We are really actively working in our own areas and communities however we can, and assisting others in their communities and areas to actually move the needle, as Dawn said, to do something. So and Mark is going to come up. I want to give you some last words to kind of close out our educational part. And Mark, I'm going to try to get him back up to speak before Soul Sister. So, Lauren Ashley, thank you, my dear. It has been a treat beyond belief. So go ahead, my dear. You have the floor. And I am so glad that you are as passionate as you are and able to, speak to all the the things that have been brought up in this space, but I know so much more, and that you do it so, like I said, authentically, in such a way that is very easy for everyone to grasp and understand, and your passion carries through. So I just want to thank you and give you an opportunity to leave us with some of your words of wisdom or call to action, whatever it is.
I appreciate the space. I think it's been a very, very important. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think it's been a very important topic. So I appreciate Miss Lauren Ashley and everybody that's been on talking about the importance of education and the attack on education, because a lot of what I talk about is about these attacks on the cornerstones of our democracy. One of which is the rule of law, and it's happening now. I was just actually when you were calling me back up, I was reading the Jack Smith reply to Trump's. Um, um, Audacious and outrageous argument to postpone the January 6th trial to 2026. And basically, I got to the point where Jack Smith is saying that the Trump team is exaggerating the amount of discovery that they have to go through because they already had most of it, which is,
Yeah, they generated a lot of it.
right. So these are things that, they had that, well, I mean, a lot of stuff is stuff that they had. And also, I haven't gotten to the part where they're talking about 2026, but one of the things I was going to talk about today, in addition to education, is just to summarize where we are. We're really close to a lot of decisions on trial dates. Next week, this time, Trump's team has to go before Judge Chutkan for this same exact case, to decide what the court date is going to be for the trial. Jack Smith is wanting wanting a trial in January 2024. Trump has suggested 2026, which is outrageous. 2024 January is kind of fast, but we'll see how that goes. So this time next week, we'll know a lot of what the posture of Judge Tanya Chutkan is in the D.C. Circuit. But one of the things I wanted to actually talk about is that there's been a lot of, and I put it in the chat. There's been a lot of talk about whether Trump can and Mark Meadows can ask for immunity with regard to, with regard to what they're saying were actions within within the scope of their duties and responsibilities as president and chief of staff. And I heard I was just perusing Twitter yesterday, and I heard that they were talking about a respected con law professor or constitutional law professor on Fox News. Now, no real respected constitutional law professor is going to be on Fox News. I mean, they have Jonathan Turley on there, and he's not really real respected anymore. And he used to be, but he's not. But they had this other guy named David Sivkin, and he proposed or asserted that the Fannie Willis indictment is preposterous because the president enjoys, or a president enjoys, absolute immunity against criminal indictment when operating within the scope of his responsibilities, and that's absolutely false. There is no president that has absolute immunity, especially with regard to criminal indictment or even investigation. President cannot commit crimes, even if they're within what the Supreme Court calls the outer perimeter of their constitutional presidential duties. And remember, we are talking about presidential duties. We're not talking about like what the president can do. These are constitutional duties that are within the four corners of the Constitution, with which the Supreme Court has interpreted. They have not expanded upon those duties in Article 2. And then the con law professor, he cited to a case called Nixon versus Fitzgerald to purport this absurd notion that a president has absolute immunity. The problem with him citing to that as a respected and reputed con law professor, which I don't think he is, unless he just patently and latently lying, is that case was a civil case that established that a president has absolute immunity from civil lawsuits related to official acts executed during their term. Now we know that that's a lie. That case is not even that's not a. We know that it's a lie that a president has absolute immunity from criminal exposure, but we know that's not even the law now. Because how do we know? Because E. Jean Carroll just sued President Trump while he was president. So the Supreme Court currently already just said you don't even have absolute immunity under the 1982 case. We're not going to go with that. But we know more. We know more than that. We knew this back in 2000 at the end of Bill Clinton's term when Paula Jones sued Bill Clinton. Another Supreme Court, the same court but different people, said that the president doesn't have absolute immunity. So why would a con law? My baby girl's getting mad too. She's getting all excited. So why would a guy purporting to be a con law professor go on Fox News and tell these lies, or maybe he doesn't know, because some of these constitutional scholars just don't know. And then there's another case too, United States versus Nixon, where the court had to tell President Nixon to hand over the subpoenas. And it didn't expressly stand for the idea that a president can face criminal indictment, but it certainly didn't stand for the idea that there's an executive privilege that's unyielding to criminal inquiry and indictment. These arguments that Mark Meadows is making to get the case out of Fannie Lewis's Fulton County and into federal court, and also he's asking for it to be dismissed because of sovereign immunity, which they're not going to get. And he's asking for it to be removed to federal court because he has federal defenses, which he's not going to get either. The asking for removal from Fulton County does nothing regarding a pardon. Even if the case is removed for Trump and for Mark Meadows, it's still state law, and they still can't be pardoned if a Republican becomes president in 2024. But what they want to do is they don't want the Fulton County jury, because Fulton County is 43% African American, 40% Black, 8% Latino, and another 8% Asian Pacific Islander. So they don't want that diversity. They want 90% white, so they can recruit jurors from or expand the juror pool to all of the Northern District of Georgia, which includes Marjorie Taylor Greene's North Georgia. So that's what they're gunning for here. So just to conclude, I know we have some good topics, and I don't want to take too much time and go through every single aspect of the RICO case. I'm going to do that next week because we're going to find out a lot. Go through some of the aspects of the RICO case that make it why I think it's so strong. But there is such a thing as presidential immunity, and it's a foundational concept in our U.S. legal team. But it's not an unequivocal shield, and to argue such a thing is just ignorant, because the Supreme Court that is currently situated now would not even agree with that. But these boundaries are going to be tested, and the defense got a defense. But it's appearing every week as we go forward, as we move forward. Donald Trump as we get closer and closer to these trials, it's going to get scarier and scarier for him. And like I said a long time ago before, I'm predicting a global plea, or at least an attempt to do so. I'm not sure if Fannie Willis is going to like that, but she's going to have to ask the question too. I mean, she's going to have to consider it at least, because a RICO case is very difficult to prove. A RICO case is very difficult to manage. It's easy to prove. It's easier to prove than a regular case, but it's a huge case. It's like driving a little 20-foot ship or driving like a 300-foot ship, right? It's going to be a little bit more difficult to navigate and maneuver. But with that, everything's still progressing, and he's going to be held accountable. These cases are very strong. Whichever one goes first, I'm thinking that there's going to be a conviction, and the Republican Party is probably going to be destroyed because of it.
I would say they're pretty much already destroyed, but thank you, Mark, for giving us those updates. And we look forward to the ones next week with more meat on the bone, because I'm sure there'll be some more things because they have to actually appear this week. So that's interesting. And I saw something funny. Someone posted a link to, Georgia. They will be taking a mugshot, and it is possible for people to request copies. And there's a link to be able to do that. And people were talking about putting their orders and things in. So anyway, just kind of a lighthearted note, but thank you so much for that, Mark.
Well,
And
not just a mugshot. His lawyers are in court today while we're speaking, while we're having this space. They're trying to negotiate his surrender to the county courthouse instead of the county jail. I'm not sure if the judge is going to go for that. I'm sure that the prosecutor is not, because giving him a taste of Fulton County Jail is going to give him a shot of reality. I'm not sure how many people know anything about Fulton County Jail. I've never been there, but I heard of it. So it's not going to be a great place to be, because you didn't just go in and go out. You got to get processed. So, and they said they're going to treat him like everybody else.
yeah, they said that early on that he was definitely going to be having a booking shot. So up next we have Joseph, real quick, and then Lauren Ashley, and we'll close out. And it's been a great space. Look, I could stay here all day with you guys, but in real life calls. So Joseph, I'm glad you were able to join us today, and I'm glad that you were safe from all of the weather, flooding, hurricanes, and earthquakes. What didn't California have yesterday?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. D. I know you want to wrap up, so I'll keep it real brief. Yes, fortunately, I think my area was relatively unscathed. I don't think that we got as much rain as initially forecast. There were some parts of my county towards the foothills that got a little bit more, but nothing like the mountains or the deserts got. So I got here to Phoenix okay. And well, speaking of Phoenix, actually, there's not too much on the Arizona political spectrum. Nothing that has really changed since since last week's space. I'm still keeping an eye on things very closely here. Any new developments? I probably the biggest development last week is that the state attorney general is opening an investigation into the fake electors scheme. She just did ask for patience because her and her team just took office in January of this year. That's why it might not be moving as quickly as some other states. I think she used Michigan as an example. I think their attorney general's been in for a while. So an investigation is underway, and I am sure we will see something out of this. Their attorney general, she is definitely about following the law, and this was a race last year where elections really do matter, and every vote matters, because she won only by like 200 votes, and she beat out a Trump loyalist, who is also an election denier. So this was a huge win for us, and it will be crucial going into next year's election. As we know, Arizona is a purple state, so to have the the governor, the secretary of state, and attorney general all be Democrats, that is a huge uh, uh, feather in our cap going into next year. So that's there. Southern California, not too much to talk about. Nothing has come up since last week's space. Just trying to get as much engagement as I can on the app from my local cohorts. To help flip those couple of congressional seats in my county that I'm trying to get flipped. Next week, I will be in Las Vegas for a few days. So, of course, as usual, I'll be keeping an eye on Nevada, and maybe posting anything that's relevant to their state. I probably sometime between now and then I will probably be posting I should say tagging their Democratic reps in a post because all three of them are going to need our help next year. They all had tight races last year, especially Susie Lee in Nevada's third district, which actually is where I'll be staying in when I'm in Las Vegas next week. So they'll all need our help in getting reelected. And just real quick to touch on the education point, just because I was able to hear some of Lauren Ashley's words, and yeah, it's just an assault everywhere. I'm seeing things even in my area that they're trying to attack the school boards, and it's just over. I think people have really taken leave of their senses, and stuff that was unimaginable a generation ago it's all out in the open. And I even though I don't have any kids, I mean, I feel for the parents who have kids that are in these school districts where these extremists are trying to take over, because their children's education is being effective. I mean, if children are not learning, say for example, not learning history as it really happened, well, that's doing a massive disservice to them. And if they're not learning things how they're supposed to be learning, it's just again, it's stunting their intellectual growth. And as somebody who has always been big on education, because my parents instilled that value in me, this is very painful to watch. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you, Ms. D, so much for allowing me the time. I know you wanted to wrap up the space, but I wanted to, join at least for a little bit today. It's been a very busy morning here for me in Phoenix. So I'll land my plane there. And thank you to you, Ms. D. Thank you, Soul Sister. And thank you to everybody else. Have a great rest of your day, all.
Thank you, Joseph. And I wanted to give you time because I know you're usually the first, and you told me you might be a little late. And so I am just glad that you were able to join us, and again, that you were safe. And I am, again, just so thankful for the great conversation that we have been afforded here today. Thanks to our awesome guest who has the mic now. Lauren Ashley, um, you have the floor.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks again, Dee, for having me. I had some craziness on my calendar, but it was so important for me to be here. I kind of moved some things around. I really did want to just share and interact and engage in this space with y'all. So thank you for allowing me to crash the party and allowing me to be a guest, and really using your platform to amplify our movement and what's going on with us in Houston, but to also use this space as kind of a way for others to kind of help pick up the charge in their respective states and localities, and really peel back the curtain on what's happening with public education. Public education is, it's political. I didn't realize how political it was until I really actually started working for the teachers union, but in understanding just how we think about education as a great equalizer. And every profession that we have, it starts with a teacher. It really is important that we protect this public good. It's so many reasons why I, as a citizen, people believe that people deserve public education, but also selfishly, I want to live in a place where people are well educated around me. I want a well educated populace. The children really are our future. These are our doctors, our lawyers, our, even the folks that will be just working jobs in like the CPS office, the DMV, that keep our country and our economy going. We want those people to be literate. We want them to be able to care for themselves. And so, I think about the way that we're trying to deprofessionalize, teaching in other professions, and it's, really about those same folks who want all those resources for themselves. They want to be able to pay us less. And so a lot of justification around that is making sure that people are not, as educated as possible. And so, again, I'm getting on my soapbox, I'm getting long winded here, but I really appreciate just the opportunity to share with y'all about what's going on, my passion, and why I'm so committed to this work. I would ask that y'all, if y'all can, please follow at Houston CDPE, and that's Houston Community Voices for Public Education. They are doing a lot of organizing on the ground. They are using all of their very limited resources to, put boots on the ground, outdoors, create materials to be dispersed through our community. And so really doing the work to inform folks. I just recently tweeted the CVP, the Houston CVP petition, but also if you can, think about maybe possibly making a donation on or volunteering remotely. So if that means like phone banking, one weekend, we would love to have y'all doing that as well. And if you haven't been to a school board meeting in your hometown in a while, I think, it might be time for you to go back and get involved. You don't have to have children, like somebody said before, you don't have to have students. If you pay taxes, if you live in that area, go be involved, run for the school board. You know, donate some paper to your campuses in those areas where those schools are under resourced. There's something that we can all be doing. Not everybody has to be an activist. I hate sometimes that I've paused to do it, but my birthday is October 6th. I'm born on the same day as Fannie Lou Hamer, and so some things are just divinely, written, I guess. But again, thank you for having me. I can't wait till I can come back and and just be an observer and a listener and really be a part of this community as well. And like I said, stay tuned to see what I'm doing next. I've got some things brewing in the works. I've been talking to some folks and really figuring out how to, best serve in this moment, and how to be the best advocate possible. So, I'll keep y'all in the loop.
Oh, thank you so much. Soul Sister, you're up next.
Wow, thank you so much to give me the opportunity to say a few words here when really there has been so much said that it's almost unnecessary, but I do appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to thank you again, Miss Lauren Ashley, for joining us today. And I do hope that while it was the first time, that it is definitely not the last time. You said something important that I think I need to counter for you. You said thank you for giving you the opportunity to talk about your movement. Well, your movement is our movement. Our platform is your platform. This is the uniqueness of our collective. We choose to advocate for democracy and amplify, good trouble. And so this is conscious. This is a conscientious action that we take each and every day. And to find you, um, I hate the circumstances that we had to find you, where you had to stand on that soapbox and you had to, pound your fists and raise your voice and demand better for our youth of today. But I am grateful that we were able to witness it. And I want to thank Dawn. I think it was your tweet that I saw that alerted me to it. And thank you so much for introducing her to our community and inspiring her as a guest today, and Dee for doing it and taking the action and bringing her to us, because it has been amazing and a welcome addition, because like I said, there are many times where you're not alone, but it is really refreshing to not just know that you're not alone, but to also even be able to have this interaction with this voice that like captured our attention and did so much to raise the level of attention about your intention of changing things in the community, and that is what we are about. You know, I'm not one, and I know I speak for many people in this space. I'm not one to just sit and complain. I can't do it. It is aggravating to me. So that doesn't change anything. And I do think that I attribute that to um, my background of working with the union, because we are, about action. Uh, Complaining is okay because you do need to get out what the issues and grievances are, so you know what you're fighting for, and where you're trying to go, what you don't want to see anymore, and what you want to demand better for. But action is where it is a step that not many people take. So whether you do it in a political arena, or whether you just uh, continue to build your platform and amplify things, and we will be here to support you in whatever those endeavors are. I do hope that this is the beginning of a great relationship, because you know uh, united we are much stronger. So anytime we can grow our community and build a greater coalition is an opportunity that we do not miss out on, and that we always embrace. And so your words today, many people have said similar things, but it was the way you said it. It was how I felt when you said it. And you are the voice for people who are voiceless. And that's okay. Some of them don't have, like someone else said, some of them aren't as anointed with the gift of being able to be an orator, and that's okay, because you're more than just an orator. You're also guiding people, and you're giving people an opportunity and a path to building better communities, and strengthening the education that is it's basically the future of our youth, which is very, very important, and which is exactly what they're trying to destroy. So I'm gonna just be on my selfish moment here and say, please keep in touch. We don't want this to be a one-off. We don't want this to be a one-time opportunity. And that's not to say that you always have to come back and speak, but just please keep in touch with the community and let us know how we can better help you. And making sure that we're all working towards the same goal, because right now democracy is really at stake. And I know we've said it a million times, and you know what, we're going to say it a million more, because that is how tenuous it is right now. I live in a blue state currently, but that blue state it's amazing that it is even blue, because we are in a sea of red. That was just hard work, dedication, and some good old grassroots getting on the get really getting into the fight. And that's what it's going to take. And so that's what it's going to take each and every election, each and every time someone tries to pass a piece of legislation that is damaging and oppressive to our communities. We are going to have to get into the fight and get dirty. And whether that means writing a letter, whether that means making a phone call, whether that means sending postcards, whether that means knocking on doors, or attending a rally, or uh, definitely the most important one is being at that ballot box. We have to make sure that we get out there and we advocate for democracy each and every day. And I just want to thank you for being in this fight, and for just being a beacon of hope for so many people. And now I've gone on, and that's okay too. And I never want you to apologize, because you know everything you say is necessary. So uh, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss D. Thank you so much for Advocacy Arena, because I'm telling you right now, it is saving our democracy. It is changing lives, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys just fill me with joy. every time I have an opportunity to gather with you guys. And as you said, there, you know, so many people have spoken and said precisely the things that needed to be said. So I am not going to repeat those things. I'm just going to say I want to thank each and every one of you, especially you, Lauren Ashley, for joining us today. And as Soul Sister said, don't be a stranger. You don't always have to speak, but you are always free to speak here. You can come and join us. Maybe you can't stay the whole time, but you know, a short time. And even when you can't, because I can't tell you the number of DMs I get from people. I'm not going to be able to make it today, or I can't stay long today, or I won't be able to speak today. It's a great community, and we just stay in touch because we all have the importance of saving our democracy in common. And we all understand that it is going to take all of us, which is why I am consistent with the work that I do here and the way that I advocate. I have a lot of strong advocacy around certain issues. Education certainly is one of them. But I know that without a democracy, it won't matter. So, first and foremost, I advocate for democracy, and then I go down my line. And education is right up there next because, as Lauren Ashley said, an uneducated populace, who does it serve? And, you know, I remind you guys all the time that this is what the Nazis did. They went straight to the education system, to the youth, because they knew that they could capture them. Even if they couldn't capture the older people, there are stories when you start, you know, looking into the history of Nazism and just, you know, finding and digging down into stories, there are stories about how that worked for them because the children were going to school getting indoctrinated with the Nazi indoctrination. The parents at home knew what was going on, and there was tension brewing in households. And Hitler heard of these things and he knew it, and he laughed because he knew what he was doing was working, because he knew those parents were old and dying, or he could, you know, get rid of them. But he had a ready, strong, indoctrinated youth, not only to espouse and buy into his ideology, but to fight for him too, because they became the fodder on the front lines. You know, they did away with the Boy Scouts. And so I just want us to just be ever aware, as I know most of you are, to always do as much as we can to support those advocates and democracy warriors like Lauren Ashley, who are out there on the front lines for us, and just remind you all that, you know, I'll read our closeout, but the struggle is a lifetime, and it is incumbent upon every generation to do their part to ensure that democracy remains. And I put a graphic that I had made from a quote from Nelson Mandela about education being the most powerful tool to change the world. Okay? And that is also just something to think about in all of the assaults that are going on against our education system here in America. And again, I just want to thank you all, remind you that the space is recorded, to share it, and remind you to come and join us again next week. And thank you for all the noise, the good trouble you're making to keep it up. Oh, one thing that I forgot to, I tweeted about it, but I didn't mention it in the space, that our Justin Jones here locally in at Fisk University, where SNCC had their training classes, is now being called to teach a class called Good Trouble 101. So Miss D might go back to school, y'all. So I love that. And I just think that's just a wonderful thing. And we're just going to have to be as determined in the fight for our democracy to save it as they are. to destroy it. And we're going to have to find as many ways, tools, people, organizations to do it, just as they are. Like they have these front groups destroying education, and they are astroturf groups. We can create genuine grassroots groups to do the same thing. We have to do the same things that they are doing to destroy democracy in order to save it. And there are, fortunately, a lot of growing grassroots groups in different areas that are directly confronting and combating Moms for Liberty. And what I find a lot of times is because when they hold control in these GOP trifectas, they no longer need the consensus of their constituents. They can just, push out edicts and do whatever they want. And when they are called on it, say going to the state legislature or going to a town hall meeting where they are confronted face to face with their constituents, they're usually left a little speechless. They don't have much response, and a lot of times they end up kind of running away and hiding. Like Marsha Blackburn has not done a live town hall since her last election. Because remember that during her last election, I tell you guys the story that um, Justin Jones went there. He was at the time a divinity student at Vanderbilt, and she threw him out. He wasn't doing anything, no holding no signs, just sitting there. And she had her security escort him out. So they run away when they're confronted, but we absolutely have to continue this press. So I just want to say, keep making noise and good trouble. And let's work to build those coalitions. And sometimes it's going to require some uncomfortable coalitions. We don't have to be in love with everyone that we work with to save our democracy, but we can all love democracy and the work that is required to save it. We can get on the same bandwagon as that, because I think Lauren Ashley spoke to that. Like sometimes these situations make strange bedfellows, and we need to, make bedfellows with folks who are interested in saving democracy, because the same thing is true like around education, that is true around gun violence. There are people who are conservative, who don't like some of the things that are being done, and we have to speak to that. And so this space that we hold every week is an opportunity for us to speak to it, to get inspired by one another, to have strategies to confront it. So I just want to thank you guys for gathering here with Soul Sister and I today, and you, Lauren Ashley, for being our guest today. And we, again, hope that it will not be the last time. You definitely have a home here, and much love. And I wish everyone a great rest of the week as I close out with these wonderful, inspiring words from John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. So I love all of you good troublemakers, and I am wishing you all a great rest of the day and a wonderful week ahead. Keep making noise, keep fighting, and I'm going to leave you all with peace and blessings.
Bye, everybody. Thank y'all again.